There is just one reality left. We are here and it is now. You get hold of that and hang on to it, you might as well be dead.
Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. Tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we will, as usual, while we wait for people to trickle in, have the weekly Lancaster County, Nebraska virus statistics where I live. We'll talk as a reviewer question, and wanted me to do this. We'll talk about an explanation of what Linux is. I was thinking about doing it last week, but this viewer usually leaves a little bit early, so I decided to do it first thing on the show. We'll have a review of Superman and Lois Season 1, Episode 1, entitled Pilot. And we will have a discussion with guest J. Marshall Presnell, who knows much more about the subject than I do, on cryptocurrencies. Now, this is a live stream, and while I won't be taking viewer call-ins tonight, you're certainly free to talk with me about anything that you want to in chat. And hello, SuperCrew63. Good evening to you as well. You can ask me any question, whether it's political, social, the virus, whose name I can't mention without risking the video being banned, or my channel deranked even more than it already is. You can talk about United States Civil War II, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are, of course, some personal questions that I won't answer, but anything else, pretty much fair game. I will get to my viewers, as many of them as humanly possible, with the understanding that I don't really want my stream to go much longer than 3 hours. However, I will warn you, there is a lot of content here tonight, and it very easily could. Now, again, I'm not taking callers tonight for reasons that will become evident shortly, but however, if you're interested in calling in, most weeks the instructions for this are scrolling past in my lower third. So now we will have, as usual, the answer to the question that no one asked: what are this week's virus statistics in Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live? Source of this, as usual, is the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department, and I have a link to that below. Very cool little website. I had a new statistic here, so now I have to slide off to the side. It has a lot of useful information. My only suggestion is that you go and look at the totals rather than the weekly stats, because it'll tell you a lot more about what the actual situation looks like. Interestingly enough, I found a website that tracks what the Lancaster County, Nebraska population is a little more accurately than the one I found before. We are currently, according to that website, up to 324,216 people, which is up a good 2,000 or so from when it was last checked. The total number of Lancaster County tests is 170,227, which is up 1,614 from last week. This is not particularly representative of anything, because the people will come and get tested more than once, depending on whether they think they might have a false positive or they just want to make sure, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they'll make tests even when it isn't necessary. The total number of Lancaster County positive tests is 27,713, which is up 328 from last week, and this continues a trend of decreasing positive cases. We're getting an increase, but we've had a peak of a large number and then went down. Total number of vaccine doses administered is approximately 74,300, which is up about 12,700 from last week. Given our other statistics and rates of increase, the vaccine frankly has yet to have any slightest effect whatsoever. The percentage of the population that has now been vaccinated is 22.917%. At least I think that what that means. It could be multiple vaccinations given. I don't know how they count this. I'm assuming that it's one vaccine per person. If so, that means that about 22.917% have been vaccinated, which is a pretty hard number. When they're telling you can't find this vaccine, I think that's an outright lie. This is, however, a new statistic this week, so I have no prior data that I have calculated personally. Total number of deaths in Lancaster County is at 220 this week. That is up 5 from last week, which represents the exact same increase from the week before. But this also continues a downward trend of increases, so that's a good thing. Deaths as a percentage of total tests is at 0.129%, and again, that's not an entirely useful statistic, but that is up 0.001% from last week. It is statistically identical. Deaths as a percentage of positive cases is at 0.785%, which is up 0.009% from last week. And aside from that big spike that we saw the week that the vaccine was first administered, this really is an identical statistic for a long time now. Deaths as a percentage of our population is a 0.0664%, which is up all of 0.0015% from last week. It is statistically identical since the virus first made its appearance. There has been no significant change, and this is smaller than the number of people who die from car accidents, from misadventure, from health problems every year. Really, in Lancaster County, Nebraska, we have zero problem. I always want to point out, as always, the Democrats here remain out for blood.
The mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. The John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies, and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
So I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of a country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril.
That's what you could have had, ladies and gentlemen, had she not been completely excluded by the Democrats in the primaries. The only Democrat who has the slightest bit of sense, and the only one who has a real handle on the exact problems that are facing us right now. If she runs for president in 2024, I will be changing my party affiliation from Republican to Democrat for the first time in 30 years so that I may vote for her in the primaries. And if she was to win the primaries, I would probably vote for her for president. She's the only sane person that's going on there right now. By the way, Tulsi, if you're not happy in your current relationship, please call me because I think I'm in love with you. Hi, Drop of Truth. Glad to see you here tonight. You'll be happy to know that I am going to be doing a discussion of Linux pretty directly here. You had asked for that offline, and I thought it was a good thing to talk about, so I'm going to talk about it. In fact, I'm going to talk about it right now. So, what is Linux exactly? Linux is a competing operating system to like Microsoft Windows. It will run on a desktop computer. It will run on servers. In fact, the Linux has really taken over the server world. Almost anything that you use on the internet, any website that you go to, the back end is Linux. It's not Windows, it's Linux. Most of the time, that's what it is. It really, really took over the server world as an operating system. It's where I spent the vast majority of my professional career, was working with Linux and firewalls and switches and stuff like that when I got into the IC security side of things. But really, a huge percentage of my time was involved with Linux. Drop 2 says the Australian and UK governments admitted that the rhymes with vaccine will not immunize anyone from the special flu. Why bother then? Well, the stats are showing that it's having no effect whatsoever in my city. The stats are exactly the same now, really, in terms of the increases and stuff that we saw before all of those people were vaccinated. I don't think it's having the slightest impact. Anyway, Linux. It has taken the server world. It took over the server world from Microsoft long ago, probably 20 years ago, at least. It is the back end for everything that you use on the internet. You don't know it because you don't see it. But people like me who used to build stuff like this, we saw it constantly. It was really my job for the vast majority of my IT career. I was a very early adopter of it for a specific set of circumstances that I don't need to go into. It's too technically complex. But it is a competitive operating system. It is the server world's operating system, no question about that. It is also can run on the desktop, although I would have to say that you would need to have a specific use case for it. If you're a gamer, you do not want Linux. Just forget it, because Microsoft Windows-based games, you can kind of sometimes get them to run on Linux, but there tend to be issues, and it involves a bunch of stuff that if you're really not a geek, you don't even want to try. I suggest not bothering. If you're a gamer, just keep Windows. It's just a problem. No problem. Dropper True says, is it true or mere conjecture that the next brew of Windows will have a Unix Linux kernel? No, not really. For several years now, a couple of releases of Windows on the desktop, they've had a Linux runtime, which means that you can run Linux programs underneath, sort of under the hood, and get them to run on Windows. I have never used this. My general feeling is, if you're, in my part of the world, if you're going to be running, running Linux programs, just run on a Linux computer. Why kill yourself trying to make it on Windows? That's kind of silly. I think down the road a piece, maybe we will see where Microsoft has, because they get closer and closer to it all the time. We may see where Microsoft decides that, yes, essentially layering their own Windows interface on top of Linux will make more financial sense for them. I don't know that that'll happen, because that would be a massive transition for all of the products they have. But, maybe. Marshall, hey, nice to see you here, Marshall. You'll be a guest later on. It's saying Linux with subsystem for Windows LSW is now a standard feature of Windows, but the kernel is still a Windows kernel. Yes, that's what I was saying. You can kind of run Windows programs under it. It goes through a layer to let you do it, but it's still Windows under the hood. All of us who have been using Linux for decades now, we're just waiting with bated breath until Microsoft finally decides, maybe it'll be 20 years down the road, who knows, that in order to remain competitive, they may just shift over to Linux and put Windows interface on top of it. I don't know that they'll do that. It would be a massive, massive change for them. They would have to redo almost everything that they currently sell. They would have to change it completely, and it doesn't seem likely to me, particularly on the server side of the world. But in the server side of the world, Linux runs the internet. Linux is the backbone of the internet. Almost everything that you use online is probably back-ended by Linux in some way or another. Now, they do operate as well on the desktop, but again, you have to have a kind of a specific use case for it. So, for example, my mother, who's elderly, she is running Linux Mint on her desktop, and she's running it because I'm a geek. Interesting thing about Linux on the desktop is you can trick it out to look like a number of different things. You can trick it out to make it look like an Apple Macintosh or Mac. You can trick it out to look like Windows. You can trick it out to look like really old stuff that nobody but geeks ever see anymore. The desktop itself is very, very highly configurable. In her case, I have it tricked out to look like Windows 95. The Windows decorations and where you see the programs and the taskbar and all that, it's tricked out to look like that because that's what she's comfortable with. But the reason that she's running it is twofold. First, she only does a limited number of things. She does things like, looking at sites on the internet. She does things like checking email and things like that. These are all things for which there are very good programs under Linux, because the Linux desktop has, it used to be 10, 20 years ago that there weren't very many programs. Now there are a jillion of very good programs that you can run on the desktop that are graphical programs that oftentimes are designed to look exactly the way that they would under Windows and act the same way. The thing about it is, the reason I prefer Linux on hers is because it's much, 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 much more stable. Linux is way more stable than Microsoft Windows. It's just that simple. It's way, way, way more stable. It's part of the reason that it took over the server world, because we can have this stuff up for long periods of time and not have to worry about it. Windows is unfortunately notorious for just going to a blue screen of death for no damned good reason. And if you're in the middle of some production thing where you're every minute that something is down, and I've had this happen in my career, you're losing literally millions of dollars per minute as it's down. You don't want that to happen. You want to make sure everything's up. So you build your infrastructure, you build everything around a Linux because it will simply run more stably. Marshall says, it might be faster than you think. Oh, really? Okay, you're talking about Microsoft switching. They'd have to move the Windows API to Linux, which is already done, and provide an execution engine, which they already have in the Windows kernel. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. We just keep waiting. We just keep waiting for Microsoft Linux to start appearing. It would certainly be helpful for them on the server side. If they could do things like, port over Microsoft SQL Server, they would then have a much more stable platform for that to run on. Microsoft Exchange, which is a huge bitch to try to maintain. I've done it. I've taught it. It sucks. It's one of those things that as a systems administrator side of the world, I'm glad I don't ever have to touch again. But those are all things that would need to be ported. And again, they would run on a more stable platform to start with. So it might be something. Drop of Truth is asking, what's my opinion of Ubuntu? Let's see, just hack us half a second about that, because I'm going to talk about that. That's a desktop version of the operating system. Marshall said, no, it would be a brilliant move, in your opinion. They'd open up the operating system in a whole new ecosystem while maintaining the ability to run native Windows applications. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea. And as you say, it may come sooner than we think. I just keep waiting for that box that says Microsoft Linux. I probably won't run it, but I'm waiting for that box. In terms of desktop operating systems, like you're saying here, Ubuntu is a version of Linux. And here's the thing about Linux. Linux is what they call free and open source software. That means that the software that's underlying the operating system itself and the overwhelming majority of programs that you can run on Linux, the source code, that is the things that the programmers write so that the program will run, is available for anyone to look at. It's one of the things that makes Linux much more stable, because somebody, a lot of geeks around the world who just like to look at this stuff for fun. They look at it to learn things. They look at it for fun. And when you have 500,000 eyes, which is certainly possible in a world this size, 500,000 eyes looking at the same code, they can find an error and then submit it to the people who are responsible for maintaining that code. And they go, oh, I'll fix for this. Done. That happens all the time with programs, with the operating system itself. Things that could be fixed that Microsoft would take a long time to roll out can be fixed in very short order because we have many, many different eyes on this. The closed source world, which is what Microsoft operates in, you will never see the source code for Microsoft Exchange. That is something they maintain internally. You will never see it. Almost everything that goes on in the Linux world, someone who's knowledgeable enough can look at it and see how it works. And in fact, this has happened over time. If you take a free and open source software that's licensed under a certain license, if you take that and you say, I don't like the way this is working, I'm going to fork it. You take all the code, you move it over here, and suddenly you start working on something that does what you think is working better. Slightly different product, works better. Maybe you'll have the users shift from one to the other. You can do that to your heart's content. That's what free and open source software, we call it FOSS, will allow you to do. Take this stuff and do anything that you want with it. On the side of Linux itself, because this is all open, there is no one distributor for Linux. There are many distributors for Linux, each of whom have a certain way of doing things that maybe make it more palatable for people who are in professional, doing something in a data center like this where you need lots of support. There's like Red Hat Linux, which is now owned by IBM, or was the last time I checked. It moves around. But Red Hat is really intended for the server world. It has a lot of things going for it that are good for the server world. And because it is a professional one that you pay money for, that means you have support for it. You can call them at any time with your support contract and say, hey, I need help with something. Then there are, and we call these various different ways of putting things together and creating the operating system to look a certain way and behave a certain way. We call these distributions or distros. And many, many different companies have different distros. Red Hat has a distro, Ubuntu has a distro, and then you have other ones that are maybe a little less known, but I think work better than some of the bigger named ones. Real quick to check over in my chat because a few of them switched through while we went through. Drop of Truth says the problem I have with Microsoft utilizing a Linux form is that maybe they may try to close its open source availability, a bit like Google did with Android, like Neo in the Matrix in terms of looking at code. Yeah. Yeah, and Marshall says, look at, work on, compile, fix, learn from. Open source is amazingly good for the computer industry, not so good for the bottom line as it removes the proprietary nature. It is certainly possible, and Microsoft Windows says, Marshall's answering that Android is open source, the drivers are closed. There are things about it that are closed, but the underlying part of the operating system, what we call the kernel, the very deepest, basest core of what makes up the functions of the Linux operating system is open source, and people can do that things with it. Would Microsoft try to make some of it closed source? No question in my mind. No question in my mind at all. I don't think they could make the kernel closed source. That would be impossible. And a lot of the tools that come with it would probably not be closed source. But if you went with something like Microsoft Exchange, yeah, they're never going to let you see the code for that. That is an internal thing that they will never, ever put out there for others to see. Marshall says, most reliable distros are Debian and Arch. They own the majority of the internet servers because they're most robust and stable. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Those are the most reliable ones. And when you get into the one that I prefer on the desktop, Ubuntu is okay. Ubuntu is a good one, but I find its interface clunky and weird. It is hard for a person who is used to Windows to deal with the interface on Ubuntu. It's clunky and weird. I don't like it at all. I don't suggest it. It can confuse you very easily. What I really do suggest, however, on the desktop, and this is the one my mother's running, is Linux Mint. And this is a Debian, as Microsoft mentions, a Debian-based distribution. I've got a link for it. It's, I think it's, linuxmint.com real easily. And Marshall sings, great distro for the desktop. Yes, and the cool part about it is, while it comes out of the box, looking very, very similar to the Windows desktop, you can, as I say, if you're geek enough, like I am, you can trick it out to look like anything. And so for my mother, to make things easy for her, I have tricked it out to look exactly like Windows. She really sees no difference between what she's dealing with on the desktop and what Windows looks like. Well, really Windows 95, because after that, to me, frankly, the interface became more clunkier and harder to deal with. She was used to that, and for her, that is a very good desktop for her to look like. But out of the box, still, it's going to look quite a lot like Windows. You will not be confused by it. Ubuntu will be kind of confusing. So I recommend it. And as you're saying, Drop of Truth saw an old Pentium laptop running Linux Mint, and it flew like an i5. That is the other thing about Linux, is it is not sucking up system resources the way that Windows does. Windows has a long history of becoming bloater and bloater and bloater. What happened was you started out with MS-DOS. And MS-DOS was a very limited operating system. Then we got into Windows. Well, for a long time, Windows had to support MS-DOS programs because that was what was out there. So they were essentially layering Windows on and keeping DOS underneath it, which was very clunky. Then they kind of finally started to phase out of that, got into a newer version, but still there were things that they had to keep supporting. And so the operating system just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew, and for the longest time, the versions of Windows would become an upgrade the moment that Intel came out with a newer, faster processor. Because you needed the newer, faster processor to run the new version of Windows. It just got to be clunky, and it still kind of is. Linux, on the other hand, much more streamlined. Even the desktops are much more streamlined. They will run on much older hardware, much, much faster. Stuff that Windows simply will not run on. If you're really interested in taking an older desktop computer and getting a modern operating system with modern programs that will run on it pretty well, yeah, a Pentium will run a good version of Linux. It's just fine. It can do older hardware very, very easily. Drop of Truth says, do you have an app for making Mint look like Windows 95? My dad would enjoy that. Do I have an app for it? No. It's kind of beyond the scope of a discussion like this. It has themes. The way that Windows used to have themes, it has themes. And you can download from a couple of websites. Maybe I'll do another video that gets into this in more detail, but you can download a theme that looks like Windows 95. And you just install the theme and boom, there it is. It looks like Windows 95. Marshall is saying he runs Mint on my Docker laptop. Docker is another thing that you can do that's well outside the scope of this discussion. But it's a Ryzen 7, 32 gig RAM, 1.5 terabyte total space. Fast as a bunny, never needs to be rebooted. Always as snappy as the Rocinante, avoiding stealth ships. Hey, cool. Yes, and that's another cool thing about Linux. Oh, God. The upgrade process for Windows sucks. I mean, it really just sucks. If you want to upgrade programs, you're downloading programs from some website someplace, and anytime there's an update, you have to download it again and do the update. If the operating system itself wants to update, it's going to do a bunch of stuff under the hood, and these days it doesn't even give you the option of rebooting. It reboots whether you want it to or not. And sometimes, I've had it happen, oh God, it's miserable when it happens. Sometimes they'll release a new version that has a bug. And all of a sudden, if you're supporting 250 servers in a data center, every single one of them has the damn bug. And you have to roll it back to the previous version of Windows until they fix the bug for the next time around. It's miserable. Linux, on the other hand, very simple. There are background processes that will run to do the upgrades. You very rarely need to actually reboot for the upgrades to take place. And when you do, it's just a simple down up, you're done. The applications themselves are cataloged and kept in various places in what they call repositories. And these repositories, you can add repositories for various programs if you want. Sometimes, like if you download Brave browser, which is available for all operating systems, including Android. If you download the Brave browser, it will automatically set up what its repositories are so that when your computer goes out and you can schedule it to go look or just let its defaults go. When it goes out to find new software, it'll say, oh, I've got a new one out of this repository. I'll grab that. Oh, I've got something out of the main repository. I'll grab that. And then it'll pull them down and it'll say, do you want to upgrade this stuff? You let it upgrade and boom, you're done. Nothing else has to happen. You get your software not from specific websites, but from repositories that are configured in, most of them by default. The overwhelming majority of them you will never have to touch. The upgrades go slick. I mean really slick. Upgrading Linux is so easy. Upgrading programs on Linux is so easy. And one of the coolest parts about it, if you're an end user, if you look at Microsoft, when you look at the start menu, you have 4 million programs that start to fill up because they just shove the program into the main part of the start menu. Linux automatically catalogs what kind of program it is. So like if it's an Office program, and there is a great Office program, I'll talk about it in a second. If it is an Office program, it will put it in the start menu in a slot for Office programs. You don't have this jillions and jillions and jillions of programs. You have essentially subfolders, that are filled with these programs. And it's all done automatically. You don't have to touch it. It does it totally automatically. So if you're an end user, your start menu is really easy to deal with. If it sounds like I gush over this, I do. I used to run this channel on a very old I don't remember what it was. It was a circa 2014 computer. It was when I was only able to do 1080p and 10 frames per second. Sorry, 720p, 10 frames per second. But I was running that off of a Linux computer. I was, really killing it trying to do this stuff. But I was still running it off of that. And again, very, very slick. Everything just updates. You don't have to worry about it. It'll ask you, do you want to update this? Or it'll say, hey, we updated the kernel, the really core part of the operating system. Do you want to reboot? It won't tell you. It doesn't require you to. It'll just show a notification and give you the option of when to do it. It is awesome that way and much more stable. Marshall says, yes, Dada for Linux is apt to get update, apt to get upgrade. Yeah, on the desktop, you don't even see it that way. That's something that we as systems admins will do on a command line or frequently automate it to do it on a command line, especially if you're running it on many, many servers like I was doing, and I'll show you kind of how that works in a minute. Yeah, it's really easy. It's really, really easy. You're not going out there and trying to find programs from many different websites. You're just getting them off of repositories that are generally pre-configured. Pre-configured ones will work fine for you. There are many, many, many programs that either look like Windows programs that do the same job or are slightly different but still do the same thing that Windows does. If you're going to cross over to the Linux world, you will find yourself with programs that you can very easily adjust to. I mean, it's got everything. Excuse me, I tried to swallow water. Anyway, it has games. It has some games. I'm not a gamer, so I don't really know much about how they run or anything like that. The only game I really play with any frequency is Unreal Tournament 1999. Yes, I have been playing that game now for 22 years, and there are still servers out there on the internet that serve it. But it's my favorite game. I've been running it forever, and it'll actually run under Linux pretty well, even though it's a Windows-based game. But there are Linux-based games. There is a great Office suite, Libra Office, that is essentially a drop-in replacement, free. You don't have to pay dime one for it. It is free and open source. You can drop it in and use it in place of Microsoft Office. It is not 100% compatible. I have occasionally run across very, very complex spreadsheets that it doesn't like. But for the most part, if you're not doing weird, complex stuff, it is totally compatible. It looks like Office used to look before they got crazy with the stupid bars and things like that. It looks like a normal program still. You can import and export Microsoft Office files, and I use it extensively. I use it very extensively, not for the Office programs particularly, but because of LibreOffice Draw. Everything you see in terms of my artwork goes into LibreOffice Draw. My lower thirds, my thumbnails, my chroma key images, all of that goes into LibreOffice Draw. And that's because LibreOffice Draw is what's called a vector-based drawing program. It's not like Microsoft Paint or some of those other programs where when you draw something, it's drawing little pixels. This is a vector program where if you draw a shape, it's describing how to draw that shape. And because I'm doing it in a vector way, when I export it out of LibreOffice Draw, it can be exported at any resolution without losing any detail. For example, you don't know it, but all of my artwork, all of my artwork is actually exported to 4K resolution. You see it as 1080p because it downscales when I'm putting it out to you. But all of this, the lower third, my chroma key image, everything is in 4K. And you see no loss of definition. Everything that you see down here is not really text. It is text that has been turned into a vector type of drawing. I can export this to any size, large, small, doesn't matter, and you will never lose detail. It will always look good. That's what I use LibreOffice Draw for extensively. And my own operating system here that I run this with is Windows because it's a graphics laptop and it's kind of tied into the hardware in a way that I can't really run Linux. I'd like to, but I would suffer some performance problems if I did it. But LibreOffice is also available for other operating systems. It's available, I'm sure, for the Mac. I'm sure it's available for. I know it's available for Windows because I use it. Again, drop-in replacement. You really, unless you're doing something very, very weird, you won't notice the difference between using the LibreOffice suite versus Microsoft Office, and you won't pay any money for it. It's free, totally free. It's free and open source. People can look at the source code. It has been forked at least 3 times that I'm aware of. LibreOffice is currently one of the forks. OpenOffice is another fork. LibreOffice seems to be the most popular one, but it's the one I've been using since forever. It's force of habit more than anything else. But it is a drop-in replacement. You can get programs that will, play videos, play music. There's a Rhythm Box, which is a program that you can use to organize all of your videos and all of your music. You can run things on it. I have a friend who takes one. He has a Raspberry Pi, which I'll talk about in a minute, and he's made it into an entertainment center. Basically, it plugs into his computer, his big monitor, like a smart box, and he can watch anything that he wants to on it. It looks and acts like it's a television with a remote and all of that. It's very cool, some stuff you could do with it. If you're a geek, my God, boy, you can really, really get some interesting things done with it. It's very, very cool. Getting back to my thing here. OpenOffice or LibreOffice? Libre is my choice. How are the Linux operating system graphics card drivers? Very good for the most part. There are a few that you have to get that what are called proprietary drivers that are not open source. They're maintained by the company that makes the graphics cards. But all the really popular ones, like NVIDIA, some of the AMDs, they're all there. You can get them. It's not a problem. It's amazing. Yes, Marshall says, getting amazingly easy to use to get exceptionally good GPU drivers. Used to be a major problem, but isn't anymore. Marshall's saying you prefer the Railgun on UT99. Well, I tell you in all honesty, I generally connect to a couple of different types of servers. Usually they're sniper servers that are dedicated to people who like to do sniping. And a lot of times they tend to be with maps where they've made giant maps. They've taken a room and scaled it up to be enormous. So you're moving on to chairs that are essentially 100 feet in the air, things like that. I get a kick out of those kind of maps, but mostly I like sniping. Drop of Truth says, how is Linux for antivirus tools? Asking because you do internet banking. Linux is not even remotely susceptible to Windows viruses. It is really impossible. The way Windows is layered out in terms of security makes it very difficult to get a virus in that even does things. But regardless, it still does have antivirus programs. I generally, when I was doing it, I don't know for sure what the landscape looks like right this moment, but I used to use ClamAV as my antivirus programs. I ran it on anything just out of force of habit. There are firewalling programs that you can get that are essentially feature identical to the way that Windows Firewall works, although the interface is a little different, and frankly I find the interface easier on Linux, but then I've been using it for more than 20 years now. Yes, you can also save with LibreOffice. You can also save as doc and docx in their Word equivalents. Yes, you can import and export them. It's really great that way. Marshall says, antivirus tools with good selection, but the best security for Linux is that command above, apt-get update, apt-to-get upgrade. You can stay ahead of almost all the black hots. Yes, and again, that's something that we see mostly as systems administrators, but modern versions of the desktop operating system have something that's running in the background that will show you a notification, hey, there's upgrades for certain things. Do you want to upgrade them? And it'll just do what that apt-get and apt-upgrade stuff is doing. It'll do it in the background so that you don't have to worry about the command line side of it. It's what's going on under the hood. You just see a nice program that says, hey, here's some upgrades for you. Do you want to take them? The answer, by the way, is always yes. Always say yes to upgrades. Always, always, always. One of the biggest problems that it happens all the time when you're in a production environment is if you're not up on your upgrades. That is the worst thing that can happen. I have seen it a million times. You would be really surprised at some of the very sensitive stuff that you do on the internet. They're running with servers that have not been updated for a long time. Always upgrade, especially with Linux. Superguru63 says, have to admit I'm totally illiterate to all this tech talk, but trying to listening, trying to understand. Feel free to ask me questions if you want to. When you get these distributions, usually they'll come, you can put them, they'll come down as a file if you want to download them from like Linux Mint, and it'll have instructions about how to get them on a flash drive. You just stick the flash drive in, boot from the flash drive rather than your hard drive, which with more computers, Windows ones that use a certain type of what's called UEFI, that becomes a little more difficult. But there are instructions about how to do that. And usually on their website, there's lots of instructions, and you get it on a flash drive, stick it in, boot from the flash drive, let it run the install, boom, done. Now you can run Windows alongside it. That's called a dual boot. It will give you the option when the computer starts up. Do you want to run Linux? Do you want to run Windows? You can have them run side by side. Not at the same time, but you can switch between them at boot. I don't generally do that. My general feeling is, if you want to do that, try out Linux. That's great. Generally speaking, I just install the whole thing onto the Linux onto the single computer and forget about it. It depends what you're doing. Again, you don't want to use Linux except under certain use case scenarios. You don't want to be a gamer using Linux. That would just be miserable. Drop2 says, I'm going to download this live stream reference purposes. Absolutely. Feel free. Pull it down after the fact. I suggest using the 4K video downloader. You can find it, I've forgotten which website, but Google or DuckDuckGo.com 4K video downloader. It will allow you to download the video in 1080p and 60 frames per second, which downloading it straight out of my interface that I have for my videos will not do it. It'll only do 720p at 30 frames per second. Marshall says, the one big thing about Linux is that if you want the cutting edge of computing, that's where you'll find it. AI, computer vision, blockchain, which we'll be talking about with Marshall in a bit, voice command and control, it's all there now. Yes, the cutting edge stuff all happens on Linux. There's no question about it, because that's where the geeks live. Very few of them you will find running anything other than some kind of Linux. The really high-end geeks just tweak the hell out of their machines, which is something else you can do if you want to. You can really tweak things to run incredibly fast, or you can tweak the hell out of it to do certain types of tasks, but it is very configurable. And generally, if you're a non-geek, the stuff that you're going to do on a daily basis, very easy to configure. And again, the upgrades are very simple. Marshall says Mac and Windows is typically 5 to 10 years behind the state of the art, and that's absolutely correct. Bitcoin evaluation 2. Yes, we're going to talk about Bitcoin as well with Marshall as one of my special guests a bit later. Now, I am currently using, as I say, a Windows desktop because of the interface between Windows software and the specific hardware that I have and the specific use case that I have. It is a gaming laptop, but at the same time, it's so high-end graphics and intertwined with the operating system that allows me to do some things that would probably be, I'd take a performance hit if I did it under Linux. I hate doing that. I far prefer to be doing using Linux because it's more stable, because I don't have to worry about the damn thing wanting to, just upgrade and not tell me about it. I don't want to worry about having to make sure that all my programs are up to date, because Linux will do that all for me. But you can also do cutesy stuff if you want to get into how to deal with the guts of things. Linux does offer a command line interface. As a casual user, like my mother, you'll never know it's there. She never uses it. This is what I have been using in my daily world since forever. It allows you to do simple things, like if you want to get got the wrong fracking thing. Where the hell is it? I was in the wrong window. There's my command line. Sorry about that. Chief. Let me get my actual command line in focus. Oh, let's get some penguins on it. Let's see. Marshall says, all my high-end computing is on Linux. And trust me, Marshall's doing some extremely high-end stuff. He does AI work and all kinds of other things. The Windows and Mac cores aren't able to handle it in terms of algorithm intensity. Yes, GTX 1070 is a space heater when I do advanced AI stuff on Linux. I'm sure it is. What's my background today? Is it NORAD or Utah Server Farm? I have no idea. What happens when I do for these, as I say, I run all my artwork through Libra Office. And when I'm doing that, I always just look for something that looks like it might be apropos to my topic, but is a very high resolution, at least 4K if I can find it. And it has to be non-attributed and hopefully not copyrighted, because I can get into trouble with that. So what you're seeing back here is some non-attributed high-resolution video of somebody's data center somewhere. I have no idea what it is. But as I say, you have a command line that you can get to if you want to. Don't know if you can see it very well because the smallness of it, but you can do things like get a directory listing of all of the of all the files in a particular of a particular directory that you're in or folder that you're in. You can change folders. You can add and delete. You can, copy, delete, remove files and all that stuff. And you can do a lot more complex things with it. When I was working in the industry, my general rule of thumb is if I have to do something more than once, automate it. And the command line allows you to do things like run things like shell scripts, which are kind of like programs. I had shell scripts at various places that I worked that were very, very complex. So suppose we had to roll out a new version of a website that we were rolling out. And we're rolling it out to 300 different servers, right? Well, you don't want to have to go to every server and type the same thing in 300 times to get it to work. So we would automate that. We would write a shell script that knew which servers to go out to, what to do to them in order to upgrade this website, and hit the button and just sit there and wait for 3 minutes, and it would be done. It is very, very useful when you want to do things like automating tasks that are repetitive. Very, very useful. The Linux command line, very, very easy, very, very useful. Show us top. Well, let me see if I've got top running on this. It's taking its own sweet time. Let me what's the machine? I have another computer on my network that I'm going to get into here that will be a little bit more useful on this, and I'll talk about what this is in a second. I'm going to run HTOP, actually. I prefer that program. HTOP is a program that will show you your CPU usage, sort of real time. It'll show you all of the various things you can see here. These are various programs that are running on this computer that I have that I'll talk about in a second, this specific computer. And then up here we have the memory usage and we have the CPU usage, which you'll notice on this particular server that I'm in is practically nothing. And I'll explain why that is in a second. But this is showing from top to bottom, which is why it's called top, or HTOP in what version I use, showing from top to bottom the ones that are eating up the most CPU time. That is, the CPU is the part of the computer that basically is kind of its brain, and it's saying, okay, how much of the brain is being used? This computer is a 4-core computer. That means it basically has 4 CPUs, and you can see it's eating up almost none of it. It's doing almost nothing. Marshall's going to be different. When he has his servers and stuff, they're going to be chugging along a lot faster than this. But I'll explain about what this computer is and what I'm using it for in a second. Let's see. Barter system still works. I'm going to talk about that, yes, with Marshall. Transmission, huh? Yes, I do. This server is doing a number of things. Let me explain that. Good time to get into it. What I'm using, what you're seeing here with the statistics on this server, I am running a Raspberry Pi 4. Let's see, I've forgotten which edition. But it's a Raspberry Pi 4. And this is a new kind of very fascinating type of computer. Not that new, but it is what's called a single board computer. Everything on it is on a single circuit board. It has inputs and outputs like you'd expect. And it's very, very small. This is a Raspberry Pi, a Raspberry Pi 4, I've forgotten which edition, the latest one, that I'm not currently using right now. I bought a kit for it. I have a link to it in my description box below. But I bought a kit for it. You can see it's got some of the standard interfaces, network interface. It's also got Bluetooth. It's also got Wi-Fi. It has outputs to go to my monitors. It has inputs for, USB 3 on it. All kinds of interesting stuff. But it's a single board computer, runs very fast. It can be set up as a desktop. I've done it. But it's not what I use it for. What I use it for is really simple stuff. I learned a long, long, long ago to never, ever trust files that you care about to your Windows computer. And never trust them. If you do, a crash and you'll lose everything that you care about. And I don't want to put stuff out on cloud services because A, they may cost money, and B, they may change, and C, they might just disappear if the company goes under. So I keep all of my very important, anything that I care about, all of the stuff for this show, all of the live streams that I download, anything that I create for it, gets mirrored over to this server here, this one that I've got this HTOP running on. It mirrors it all over there to a pair of 10 terabyte hard drives. Now, they basically act like one hard drive. One is mirroring the other, constantly mirroring the other. So if I lose the computer itself, I still have my 2 mirrored drives with everything I care about on it. If I lose one of the drives, I still have everything that I care about on it. You would have to run into a really weird situation for me to actually lose my data. All I have is this, with a pair of USB 3.0 high-speed, off-the-shelf 10 terabyte hard drives plugged into it. That's really its main job. Marshall noticed that it's running transmission. I am running a BitTorrent server because I do what's called permaseeding. If you get into BitTorrent, when I'm permaseeding something, that means that I've got some BitTorrent that I think I want out there forever, either that I created or that is something that I want to sure is out there forever. So I just let it run constantly. If I want to get new stuff, I basically have a web interface on my regular computer that talks back to this server, and I drop in anything that I might want to download to it. It talks back to this server, and this server is doing all the heavy lifting. Not that it's doing much heavy lifting. It's barely ticking over for what I do. I know Marshall does a lot of stuff with Raspberry Pis that probably cause it to do a lot more. And Raspberry Pis are fascinating because you can do all kinds of things with these. That if you're on the geek side or the development side, there are so many cool things that you can do with it that are just amazing. These things are actually starting to take over data centers in some cases. If you use Amazon Web Services, basically they've got whole server farms full of these. Much, much smaller than your average x86, which is a traditional server. Much, much smaller, very highly scalable. Very fascinating things you can do with them. As I say, I have a friend who uses one that is just his entertainment system. That's all it is. He has it plugged into his big screen TV, and he runs his entertainment system on it. Me, I'm a geek, and I know how to find my entertainment without having to do that, but it's a great interface for him to do. Let's see. Let's see. Drop2 says, we had the Let's barter system late 1980s in southwestern Australia, Margaret River, for nearly a year until the government shut it down. No tax being paid, of course. Well, we'll talk about that too when we get to the crypto stuff in a bit. Got to look at my time here. So it's been almost an hour. That's good. Marshall says, lovely little machine to Pi 4. I love the all things Raspberry. Great for experimenting or spinning up utility servers. Also learning Linux. Yeah, absolutely. Number one at that. Drop2 says, so much to learn, so little time. Well, the good thing about it is it's all out there. Everything that I'm talking about, you can find out about in excruciating detail. You can self-tutor as much as you want. There's so many different, because this is all open. There are so many different things that you can get into where you can start out as a complete neophyte and find out interesting things about it as a complete neophyte and move onwards and upwards as you go. And as Marcia says, the Pi is a great learning platform. It doesn't have to be a Pi, but they're really inexpensive. The kit that I actually have linked to is about $100, but that's because it includes not only the single board computer. Yeah, I've got this one screwed in. Not only the single board computer, because it's tiny. There's this little tiny circuit board in here. But also it's got this case for it. And the case is a good thing. It has some cooling things going on with it that are a good thing when you're dealing with some of these higher end Raspberry Pis. But it is a great little thing. It can do a lot of stuff. The one that my friend has is a desktop computer for all intents and purposes. For a while, this was in fact my mother's desktop computer. And we changed it out for various reasons. But it was for a while, and she had no idea. It looked exactly like Windows 95. That's how I tricked it out. Drop2 says, how did I go with those bots I was hassling? Oh. What happened was there weren't really bots. There were these two woke a-holes who decided to come in and throw videos of like The Rock saying, shut the hell up or something like that on a couple of my tweets for no reason that I could discover. So I started treating them as if they were bots. I said, okay, let's imagine these two idiots are bots. I'm going to start putting out keywords to see what they generate back. So I started out with George Carlin's 7 Deadly Words You Can't Say on Television. I posted one to see what they would come back with. Then posted another one, see what they would come back with. Sometimes I would post the same word repeatedly to see if I got a different answer. This is how you would test to see how a bot is actually configured. Is it configured to spew out, answers based on keywords and stuff like that. So I was doing that over and over. They eventually got tired because, hey, I got patience, buddy. I got patience like a Jedi Knight. I can sit there and type words at you all you want. So I was just messing with them, and I was kind of inviting people to do the same if they wanted to go in and just throw a keyword in. Don't engage them at all. Just put a keyword in and piss them off, make them frustrated because they're not getting your goat. They're just being tested as if they were a bot. Let's see. Permaslating weird old movies. Not really. Let me get my interface up and I can tell you what I'm actually seeding right now. I am permaseeding all of these Star Trek Continues Blu-ray discs. I want to do that. They distribute their Blu-rays via BitTorrent. It's perfectly legal to seed them that way, so I seed them all that way. I am permaseeding Superman: The Final Cut, which is a fan edit of Superman from 1978. Basic thing you have to worry about there, is my understanding anyway, is if you want to watch that, you have to own a copy of the original. I have a few others that are a little bit on the odd side. Just looking at the weirdest one I've got here. I have one that I created for myself called the Christchurch Shooting, and it's the full one because it has not, you remember this is the guy who went to a mosque, or two of them, in New Zealand and shot up everybody. And he had a manifesto that he put out. It was one of the few times we can look at one of these guys and say, wow, this is what a crazy person looks like. And it have an archive of all the stuff that he had, as well as an archive of like his Facebook page, his Twitter account. It's all there. I want that out there permanently because I think, it's, like I said, one of the few times you get a window into a real nut job. What's going through his twisted brain. It's really strange to have that happen, so I want that out there. So that's probably the oddest thing. Marshall Presnell thought a Raspberry Pi 4 is a lot more than $55 US living in Australia. If you're just buying the circuit board itself, it's really cheap. But if you're new to the things, I kind of suggest you buy maybe a kit that includes the case like this, because it will help you out a lot when it comes to cooling. The Raspberry Pi 4s run kind of hot, and it's good to have the cooling features that are built into that case. Oh my gosh, boy. See, Marshall says one of the most amazing things about the Pi 4 8 gig model, which is one of these things here, 75, is that you can make a really full featured and highly capable Kubernetes cluster with 7 or 8 of them, a super cheap cluster for cheap. That gets into stuff that's more complicated than probably we need to do, but it is, when Marshall's talking about, is indicative of just how amazing some of this stuff on the Pi is. Marshall says, you're absolutely right. Sci-fi is now for all of us. It's that advanced now. Most of us don't realize it. Yes, I always say we live in a science fictional world. Everything that we look around and everything that I see right now did not exist, with very few exceptions, did not exist when I was born. And when I die, by then, everything else will have been completely replaced with something even more science fictional. Drop Truth says, I got bashed on Twitter for saying some of the scientific community act like religious zealots. When the basis of physics and astrophysics is mere conjecture or a mathematical theory only. Yes, there's a whole long tweet thread. It's fascinating. It's been going on for coming up on a week. I've only been really monitoring it and occasionally getting in. But it's been branching out into all kinds of other stuff. It's really fascinating. It's like the thread that never ends. It just goes on and on, my friend. It's amazing. It keeps going on. But yeah, you've gotten some of that as well. There are some things that are rather conjectural at this point, that are very cool math, but it's unclear how much that math really relates to reality, and I agree with you on that. Careful with the New Zealand CC stuff, Bill. You can only be imprisoned in New Zealand for 15 years just by possessing it. Well, I'm not in New Zealand nor subject to their laws, and people around the world should see the inner workings of a complete psychopath. It's very rare you see that. Now there are, as with everything Linux related, there are different distributions for the Raspberry Pi. The one that most people use, the one I use, is called Raspbian. Link to that below as well. When you get a Raspberry Pi, it will not have the operating system already installed, but getting it installed is really easy. There's a lot of there's a lot of different tutorials about it. Very, very simple to do. If you know how to put, here's the memory cards that they come with. Let's see if I can pull mine. I have a 512 gigabyte. What is it? It's so tiny. I'll put it up to the camera in a minute. Well, it's one of these infinitesimally small ones. And it's green, so it's showing through. But absolutely tiny. To get the operating system on it, you have to buy it, and most of them come with an adapter to go to like USB. But once you've got that, it's really, really, really easy to put the operating system on. And you just plug it in like I'm doing now. And once it's plugged in, you have a working computer. And Raspbian is the one that most people use. There are a couple of others, but it's the one that I use, and I think it suits most purposes fine. Let's see. Drop 2 says, yeah, the lengthy thing that we've been involved in for a week or so now, it did start out with something about New Trek, and it just went way off. SuperGuru63 says, oh, some old DOS games that I really like. Is there a way to make them work? Yes, there is. There's a great program that runs under Linux called DOSBox, and it will run your DOS programs slicker than you'd imagine. Really, really fast. I actually have I have one that runs Windows 3.1 in a window on my computer. It's faster than any native computer I ever ran Windows 3.1 on. It's amazing. You can run all kinds of stuff. Yeah, DOS games are no problem. I have 2 or 3 of my own that I have like that. Yes. VTrek, VTREK, and it only ever shows up if you do a search for vtrek.exe. But it is a port over of the very, very early original Trek program that you found in text-based computing way back when. And by the way, there is a program that you can get for Linux, the original text-based Trek. But this is a nicer one with a little GUI. It's probably the best one, frankly, that I think has ever been made, including the Windows ones that tried to do the same thing. So DOS program, one's fine on DOSBox. Not a problem with it. Yes, I'm sorry. You're right. Marshall, the storage card that I've got is the 128 gig one. That's what I was showing, was the storage box. The RAM itself is hardwired. You cannot upgrade RAM on these. If you're buying them, try to buy the ones that have the most RAM. You'll be, giving yourself some leeway, basically, technically. But like I say, look at mine, man. Barely ticking over for what I do with it. Yes, it is a micro SDHC card, and they're cheap as chips. They're pretty much cheap everywhere. They're really very inexpensive. But yeah, you got one of those and a USB adapter for it, which they almost always sell with them because they know you're going to be plugging it in at some point to a computer. Once you got that, putting Raspberry on them is really simple. Plug it back in, stick a monitor on it, keyboard or mouse, or use the Bluetooth. It's got Bluetooth. You're done. You're there. You have a computer. Out of the box, it's going to look just like a desktop computer. Used to work, Marshall says, with the author of WinTrek, Joe Jaworski. Okay, talking about all the Trek stuff reminded me of him. I need to go find him. It's been years. I didn't. Yeah, WinTrek was another good port. I still like VTrek, the old DOS game. I really do. That is, in a nutshell, what Linux is about. It is an operating system that runs better than Windows, will work better than Windows on older computers, is completely taken over the back-end server of everything that you do on the internet, and stands a chance of Microsoft going to it as the basis for the Windows operating system. It's a good idea. Boy, would their upgrade processes get a lot more, and would become a more stable platform. It would be a lot more useful for upgrading. I keep waiting. We keep waiting. All of us have been using this for years, just waiting for that box that says Microsoft Linux on it. Drama True says to Oliver Frank 10, he called me a Neanderthal because I didn't use calculus or statistical derivatives, even when working as a consultant engineer for construction purposes. I don't know anything about that side of it. I haven't been paying a whole hell of a lot of attention to that the last couple of days when I've been on Twitter, and I frankly try not to as much as I can, to be honest. When I've been on Twitter, I have been noticing a bunch of bullies. I wouldn't call them bullies. I can't call anything online really bullying, but a bunch of guys who will get on here. They're sub to Kevin Sorbo. I follow Kevin Sorbo. He tends to, post stuff that's religious. He's a devout Christian, and he'll post things that are religious, and there are people who are following him just to be complete a-holes to him. And occasionally I'll respond to them that, no, you're just wrong about this. You're just wrong. You're just being an a-hole. Why are you doing this? Why are you bothering with this? Do you have nothing better to do in your day than sit around and talk to, and try to, badmouth a guy who's just giving out what his beliefs are? Why are you ragging on the Christian? Why? Here's a guy, Kevin Sorbo, who has essentially been blacklisted because he's a conservative, because he is a Christian. And I get on those with him. I just, why are you doing this? What business is it of yours of his religious beliefs are? I'm an atheist, right? Like, what business is it of yours? Why are you coming down on this guy? What's the point? That's mostly what I've been doing. Fruitlessly, I may add. But it bugs me, so I do that. So that is pretty much what I have to say about Linux. One other thing that I have to mention. You'll notice down here that it's saying new Linux. That GNU is pronounced new. That is a recursive, a three-letter acronym. Stands for new is not Unix. Here's the deal. A lot of the very core programs that are used for day-to-day tasks, and some that are more complex, are maintained by an outfit called the GNU Foundation, GNU Foundation. This is run by a guy named Richard M. Stallman, or RMS, as he's known in the geek world. RMS likes to have Linux mentioned as new Linux, GNU/Linux. And this is because he thinks that not having that in there is minimizing the amount of effort that has gone into making all of these tools that work under Linux for so long. He's kind of right about that. I got to give him credit. He's kind of right. But for the most part, people don't call it new Linux because it's more complicated to explain what the hell that means. And I had a brush with RMS years ago. I was writing an article that was aimed at complete neophytes about Linux. And I emailed him to ask him a couple of questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I mentioned what I was doing, and he was like, well, make sure you call it New Linux. And I'm like, well, I sent back, I don't know that I could do that. It's complicated. It just makes things more difficult. I'll probably just call it Linux. And he got into a giant huff. We went back and forth about 2 emails before he finally sent me something back that said, all of your emails from now on are going to dev null. Well, if you're a geek, /dev/null, which we call dev null, is where you send something if you just want it to disappear. It's like sending it nowhere. So all of my emails to RMS, one of the most famous guys in computing ever, are now going straight to nowhere. He gets no emails from me at all and hasn't for over 10 years. He is really big on calling it New Linux, but nobody does really. Only he and some of the people he's associated with. But you have to give him credit. A lot of these programs, some of the stuff that I'm running up here, originate with his foundation, and it's all free. It's open source. And, there's a case to be made for calling it New Linux, but nobody ever does. There's very few distributions and stuff that do. So let me drop out of my command line here. Drop out of where I'm got for that. Marshall says all of my emails come from DevNull. Tends to solve any problems. Yes. So that's Linux. Feel free to ask me any other questions that you may want to ask me about that. I am happy to answer all of them. And if you have any questions, I'm not covering here, feel free to put them into my comments. God knows I could use comments. You can, catch me up on social media. Most of the ones that I use regularly are listed in my description box. But certainly feel free to put comments down, and I will respond to them if I humanly can. So Linux out of the way, and that took about about an hour. That's good. Because boy, do I have some good stuff to say for once for something that's on television that's superhero related. And that, my friends, is Lois and Clark. I'm sorry, Superman and Clark. I keep mixing those up because of the previous TV series that was called that. Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 1, titled Pilot. Okay, before I get into that, just as a totally off the subject thing, total aside, I'd mentioned that according to a calendar published by DC Comics in 1972, today is the birth date of Toby Manning. Toby Manning is the real name of a supervillain called Terraman, and he was one of Superman's longtime antagonists. First appeared in Superman Comics number 249 in March of 1972, and he has appeared intermittently and in various forms over the years. So my review of Superman and Lois for Season 1, Episode 1. So I always say, unlike most reviewers, I don't sit down and rehash the plot, pausing to say what I liked or I didn't like. You will find, and this is true of this one, you're going to get an in-depth review for the first time in quite a while because I haven't wanted to do one for Batwoman. It isn't worth my time. You're going to find far more depth than any other reviewer, and I will touch on everything that goes into making a film or a TV show. So we will just take it as read that if you've come to this video looking for a review, you have already watched Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 1, or you don't care that it's spoiled for you. However, for safety's sake, we should probably issue a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a secret master of fandom, and that means that the fandom is strong with me. But this isn't a boast or a brag. This is just what happens when you have watched, read, and listened to over 100 years worth of science fiction. But the problem with Secret Masters of Fandom is that we are cursed. We can't just see the new stuff without seeing the whole century that came before. And we sometimes find that nothing is really original, and it sometimes interferes with our ability to enjoy things. One thing I do not do is outrage reviews. There are a lot of reviewers who are simply actors portraying outrage because outrage sells. They hate everything as a knee-jerk reflex because their viewers want to see them hate things. This causes a weird feedback loop between popular reviewers and fans where ultimately nobody likes anything. But I don't do that. If I like something, as I do with Superman and Lois, I will say why in detail. If I dislike it, I will tell you why in detail. But I don't do outrage because unlike other reviewers, I am the adult in this particular room. SuperCruise63 says, the best DC show since the first season of Arrow. Oh, God, yes. I cannot say enough good things about Superman and Lois. And the first thing I can say is, screw Batwoman. Oh, I hated that show. It was not worth my attention. I hated it. It wasn't even so bad that it was good. It was just bad in every possible respect. And thankfully, now I have a show that not only is good, at least the first episode, they have a chance to screw it up, but this first episode was great, and I am never, ever, ever watching Batwoman ever again. Never. It was insulting my intelligence. It was a terrible show. I am never watching it again. I am so glad that I have something good to watch. I am kicking Batwoman off forever. I am never paying the slightest bit of attention to it ever again. You should not be watching Batwoman. It sucks. But you should be watching Superman and Lois. Good show. Worth watching. I give it a 4 out of 5 in general. And I might give it a 5 out of 5, except for some little nitpicky things. And trust me, most of what was bad in this was nitpicky. But I'll get to that. Always want to call out the great moments. Well, hell, with this show, the great moments are damned near everything. This is a really good show. SuperCruise63 says, well, Stargirl's pretty damn too, but this looks very promising. Hope they don't screw it up. Yes, I'll be talking about that in a second too. Almost everything is really good with this. There are some things that I'll talk about that I didn't like. Mostly they're nitpicky, however. But before I go on with this, I have to sort of repeat things that I said in my review of Superman 1978. I have a very long, very personal history with this character, and I believe that for the most part, maybe they've gotten it right finally, for the most part, I understand this character better than anyone writing him in any media, because we kind of have the same backstory. Not that I'm a superpowered alien from another planet, but the backstory of how we grew up is kind of similar. I was born in a fairly small town, not as small as Smallville, in South Dakota. I grew up in a city like I do now, the same city I'm in now, that at the time was about 100 and 150,000 people. It's about tripled in size now. And I spent summers on my grandparents' cattle ranch in very, very rural South Dakota. If you watch my video, A Trip to SYL Ranch, sort of, you can see just how rural it is. And frankly, in the 1978 Superman movie, when you see this, which is a shot near the Kent farm, it really, really, really reminded me of that ranch. So I spent summers there, anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, from the age of 5 to 15. That place is now in my bones. I hope to retire there and, frankly, die there someday. It is this whole area is kind of in my bones. So I understand what living on a place like that is like, what it takes to actually run that, what it takes to live out there. And I've been associated with small towns. I have lived in towns as small as 1,000 people, which is about like Smallville. So I understand how that small town life works. I went to Chicagoland and spent 10 years there. And Chicagoland, frankly, it's as close to Metropolis as anybody might get. You know, New York City is generally the stand-in for Metropolis, but hell, Chicago, about the same. Spent about 10 years there. And then when my kids were very small, my ex and I moved to the North Sioux City, South Dakota. That is part of a 3-city area: North Sioux City, South Dakota, South Sioux City, Nebraska, and Sioux City, Iowa. They're just all at a conjunction of 2 rivers. And, different states, but conjunction of 2 rivers. And so I know what living in a small city is, and the reason that we moved was because we kind of thought maybe this would be a better place to raise children than it would be in Chicagoland. And I think that was generally true. Didn't work out that way, that we ended up doing that entirely. But that, I have that bit of life experience. So we get to this show, which is taking Superman and giving him to teenage children and taking him out of Metropolis and moving him back to the farm. Wow. Another piece of this backstory that resonates with me personally. Here he's doing something that's very damn similar to what I did with my own children. I mean, they were much younger than that, but still. And, the interesting thing about it, too, is you have to think about it from a reality perspective, too. If Superman's going to have children, one of whom has superpowers, then you are not going to be able to hide a superpowered child in a big city. You just can't. There are too many eyes. Not that many eyes out here. My father said when Superman Returns came out, he said, well, I guess it's time for Lois to move to a farm because you're not going to be able, that kid had, is like 8 years old, had superpowers. You're not going to be able to hide that. Not in a big city. You got to go out somewhere that's remote so that he can do all these super things, but nobody will ever see him. So this thing really resonates with me on many, many levels. On that level that they've got him out now, going back to the farm because, want to keep the farm for the family's sake, and that's a really good dynamic. But also the entire notion that you need to do that for raising the children there, I think makes perfect sense. It's, again, a bit of his backstory that they've added on here that he's never had before. This has never appeared anywhere in comics or films or anywhere else, but it still resonates with me personally because this is what I damn did. It is fascinating to me. It really resonates, and that's one of the reasons I really, really like it. Hey, Alexa, glad to see you in here. Hope you saw Superman and Lois first episode because I'm spoiling the hell out of it. Super Crew, you're getting, okay, I already talked about Super Crew 63. But closest to Metropolis, you live is St. Louis for a while. Definitely prefer small towns. Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. I'm living in a relatively small city now, but again, when certain things happen personally, Wall, South Dakota is in my immediate, in my future, I think. So with this show, again, not only is it resonating with me personally, and not only is it making a lot of sense with regards to how you're going to raise a superpowered child. You did not yet? You're working? Oh, but don't mind the spoilers? Well, okay, because it's going to spoil. I'm not really going to go through the plot. I never do that. I am going to do what I've done on long-form reviews, shortened a bit. This is something that you would have seen in a long-form review from me, way back when I was doing nothing but reviews. So, show resonates with me. I think it's well done, period. I think putting, Clark and Lois and his kids into this position is really nice. I think that's really, really nice. Alexa says it was on the fence about bothering to watch it, but you inspired me to go check it out. Absolutely, this is the best show that's come out on the CW, period, end of story. Because this is out, I am ditching ever watching Batwoman again. Batwoman is insulting my intelligence, always has been. So glad to be rid of it. I'm so glad to be able to review something on a weekly basis that's good for once. And they have screwed up Superman constantly. This is really the first time I've seen them do anything that really is like Superman, as, my backstory and all that tends to fall out, that I think is any damn good since 1978. The current Superman stuff that they're doing is crap. It's taking Superman and trying to put him in the real world, which you can't do with superheroes. I've said about that a million times. So I hate that, but this is great. I think this is great. Supercrude63 says, I grew up in San Diego and live in a small town. At the moment, much prefer it. Yeah, I do as well. Yeah. So, some Easter eggs. Oh, God, but there are Easter eggs in this. If you're going to watch, you're going to see, videos that do nothing but walk through the Easter eggs. But some of the ones that just jumped out at me because I'm a secret master of fandom. There are a million of them. A number of them caught my eye. One of the first ones that caught my eye was in the Kent home in Metropolis. There was a whiteboard that read, "Call Dr. Donner." Well, this is a reference to Superman 1978 director Richard Donner. The same whiteboard said, "Call Siegel and Schuster." Well, this is a reference to Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. That was amazing. Super Cruise 63 says the guy who plays Superman in the show does a great job. Yes, going to talk about that. Again, this is similar to a long form review you might get. This is one of those ones that I could see going past 3 hours, this stream. Another Easter egg where Superman froze a chunk of a lake or a river or something or other, and then ran over to the nuclear reactor with it and held it over and watched it melt. This is a callback to Superman 3, in which Superman did the same thing, only it was much less well executed. It was very poorly executed. Then there's this. Oh, God, did I love this. Just it's another callback, right? At the beginning, we're seeing one of the first things that Superman's doing around Metropolis, and we see him in this costume. This is an absolute direct homage to the 1940s Fleischer Superman cartoons. If you haven't seen those cartoons, go and watch them. Your brain will love you for the rest of your life. They're awesome cartoons. I forgot to put a link to it. I will after the stream is done in my description box, because there's lots of good copies on YouTube. Go and watch those. But I got a huge kick out of it because it is precisely the costume that they've got him in. Exactly, the S with the black background, the white, the white border, the trunks, everything. Exactly like the ones in the Fleischer cartoons. Huge kick out of that. Huge kick out of that. The S got you too? Yes, exactly. It was great. It was great. And then there was the exact recreation of the cover of Action Comics #1. That was amazing. This, of course, is the cover of Action Comics #1, the very first appearance of Superman in June of 1938. And you can see he's holding up this car. In Action Comics, he's actually smashing the car. Here, he's letting it down. But look, the angle's the same. The green car is the same. I mean, it's the same freaking color green. And it's got the same number of windows, which are broken out. And it's just amazing. Just amazing. Secret Master of Phantom Time. Like, oh, God, that's astonishing. Perfect. Great, great, great Easter egg. Now, I will say, again, Secret Master of Phantom, this show is actually a little bit derivative. In a history as long as Superman, they've done a lot of stuff. One thing they once did was what they called an imaginary story. Well, what that really meant was it was a story that took place outside the DC chronology, the actual in-universe stuff that they were doing. It was experimental. It was what they eventually ended up calling like an Elseworlds. Doesn't happen inside the mainline DC continuity. Well, Superman and his wife, who, by the way, was always in darkness, because at that time in comics, there was a rivalry between Lois Lane and Lana Lang as to who would marry Superman. So his wife in this story is always in shadow. You never see who she is. But they had 2 sons, one of whom did not have powers and had slightly lighter hair. And the other one had dark hair like Superman and had powers. Guess what? This show has done the exact same thing. Now, this cover doesn't show the entire story. In the story, they get older. They're teenagers. And because of the assumptions of the era, the superpowered one was the one that, did all the heavy lifting and things. And the other one was non-superpowered, got very brainy. And they did some stuff that was, had to do with continuity at the time that I won't bother talking about. But they done it. Way back then. Alexa Chipman, Team Lana. Oh, well, yes, if you're familiar with comics from that period. I don't know who I was necessarily team for, but like I say, the rivalry was ongoing at that time in mainline comics, so they did not show her. Every single panel that Superman's wife is in, you do not see her face. She's in shadow in some kind. Morgan Edge is in this, is mentioned here, and I'm sure he's going to come up more as a character. Okay, if you've been watching that terrible Wonder Woman 1984, I think, isn't it, that Morgan Edge is in there or something? I don't remember. Such a terrible movie. Morgan Edge has a very long history in DC Comics. He's evolved quite a lot since his original appearance. But in his original appearance, it was when Jack Kirby came over from Marvel. And they said, well, what do you want to do, Jack? And he said, well, can I take over the Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen? title. Now, until that time, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen was basically, one-off stories where Jimmy would get into trouble and do things like turn into a rubber blob or an alien or something stupid, a porcupine, really dumb stuff. But then Jack Kirby took it over, and that's where he created the New Gods that included Darkseid and all of those things that we think of now as the big bads of that universe. And Morgan Edge was initially a big part of it. Morgan Edge was initially one of Darkseid's minions on Earth. That changed over time. But what he did come in, as is in this show, he came in, bought the Daily Planet. He was running Galaxy Broadcasting System, Galaxy Communications. And this was the really weird part. Because they were updating Superman at that time, they decided that when Morgan Edge bought the planet and he had this Galaxy Broadcasting System, he made Clark Kent an anchorman on television. And he was like that for a good 15 years. And he was no longer a news reporter he was no longer a reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper. He was actually a face that everybody saw every day, looking out at them, telling them the news. Okay, 10 out of 10 for updating the mythos, but minus several million out of 10 for good thinking. Because now you're dealing with a thing where people not only see Superman's face, but they see Clark Kent's all the time. And, this just ain't going to cut it anymore. When they rebooted that in 1985, that was the first thing that went, because they knew that was kind of a dumb idea. But Morgan Edge did buy the planet. He did downsize. He did move Clark from being on the planet itself to a news anchor for WGBS in Metropolis. So I'm not entirely certain what we're seeing here in terms of Morgan Edge. Is he just this horrible businessman that we saw him be from time to time? He eventually turned into kind of a curmudgeon, kind of that rich guy running everything, and you would have to run stuff past him, and he'd be, I don't want to do that. No, it's going to cost money, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure which version of Morgan Edge we're going to see here, but there is the possibility, depending on what they do with this show, that he could usher in some level of Darkseid. That would be very interesting. Alexa, prefer the older Superman comics, skipped Wonder Woman in 1984. Watch the pitch meeting. Or watch a reaction to the pitch meeting. The reactions are better because they'll react to it and they'll go, "Oh my God, that's exactly right." And by the way, all this happened too. It's a terrible movie. Certainly don't pay for it. Watch the pitch meeting. Anyway, that's going on there. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I find the fact that Morgan Edge is involved and they're doing some of the stuff that they're doing in comics very interesting. Another thing that happened when Morgan Edge came around, a guy named Steve Lombard came around, and he was the sports reporter for WGBS. He was the usual sort of stereotypical jock jerk who was constantly trying to make Clark Kent look bad, which actually worked well for Clark because he would make him do things that turned out to be clumsy and stupid, and so it would help people think he wasn't Superman. But again, the whole notion of putting Superman in front of everybody for the news for half an hour every day or more was kind of dumb. One of the things they got rid of. But preferring the older Superman comics, the thing about it, too, for me, not only does my backstory mirror a lot of Clark Kent's, I guess, backstory. When I spent the summers that I did out at the ranch that looked very damn much like what you see in this picture, they had an outroom. It was actually an original log cabin from when the area was first settled. But it was basically they turned it into a big storage area. Well, my uncles had been reading late Golden Age and through Silver Age comics when they grew up. And when they left home, they just left all the comics. So I got to read all of these freaking comics. They're gone now. I wish I knew where they went because I'm sure now they'd be worth something on eBay. But my God, just comics after comics after comics that were the original published comics from the late Golden Age and into the Silver Age, well into the Silver Age. Got hooked on comics that way. So yeah, the number of comics I've read, they have them all reprinted now in, bound volumes and stuff like that. But I got to read those kind of as if I was reading them as a brand new reader of that era. So yeah, I prefer comics prior to, I mark the end of when I like DC Comics, really like it, with the departure of Julius Schwartz. And you may not know who he is, Alexa. Julius Schwartz is the counterpart of Stan Lee at DC Comics. What Stan Lee was doing at Marvel, Julius Schwartz was doing at DC at the same time. He wasn't a showman like Stan Lee was, so his name was never really out there. But you can credit him for kicking off the Silver Age. He was the one that really kicked off the Silver Age in advance of Marvel doing what they did. And he was largely in control of much of DC Comics, and certainly Superman as a character, until he finally retired in 1985. And that's when they rebooted the DC universe for the first time. I don't know how many times they've done it now. But his thing as a boss was he knew when to say no. So if somebody came to him and said, I want to do this with Superman, it's really radical and dumb. He would say, no, that's a stupid idea. Write me something else. He would do that. Nobody at DC is doing that now. There's nobody there that says no to anybody. And as a consequence, I think that basically the comics tend to suck. I think art tends to thrive in some level of adversity. And he provided a certain level of adversity that made some of the stories better. Alexa saying, my uncle had some of those. Whenever I visited, I would vanish as a kid and be under the stairs reading them. Yep, absolutely. I was so thrilled. It was so much fun to read those, when you're not out doing something at a working ranch that looks a lot like this. Anyway, moving on, because this is going to be a longish review. Okay. Had some cringe moments, which I'll talk about in detail more. Some of it had to do with character ages. We see Lois and Clark supposedly aging through here, but no attempt is made to make them look any younger than, about their 40s, I guess, now is what they look like. Superman's costume, he's obviously wearing a muscle suit. That looks suckage. God, why do you makeup guys just love stubble on men? Why do you do that? Superman Clark is constantly around with this black stubble. Why? That's stupid. Superman shaves. Period. End of story. Why are you doing that? Nuclear meltdowns do not happen the way that this was written. And getting into writing, because I always do this, the writing was by Todd Helberg. His credits are he's active from 2016 to present. Primarily, he's a producer. He produced 15 episodes. He's producing 15 episodes, all 15 episodes of this first block that has been ordered for Lois and Clark, Superman and Lois. He's the showrunner for the series. He's also done 63 episodes as executive producer as The Flash, 17 episodes as writer for The Flash. And this is the only episode for this season that he's credited on for a teleplay. Considering that he did other CW work, that's probably a good thing. Alexa's saying, excellent points. Sometimes no is the right answer. Yeah, the inmates have been running the asylum at DC for 20 to 30 years now, and they have now created a universe that is so incoherent and full of internal contradictions. Basically, what's happened is anytime somebody takes on a new book, like Superman, they say, oh, I'm going to change everything so that it works the way I want to. And they just blow away the entire backstory that the previous person had been writing on. Then they get a new person, and they blow away what that guy did. And it's just getting ridiculous. Julius Schwartz would say, no, we have a coherent universe. You can't write stuff that's going to just rewrite things because you want to do it differently. Come up with a better story. Story credits on this are also Todd Helbing and Greg Berlanti. He has been active from 2000 to present. Oh man, I always get on these shows. If you watch me review older movies and stuff, you get people who are active for like 50 years. 20 years is pretty good. He is largely a producer. He has 66 credits for TV series, including 25 episodes of Batwoman and other Arrowverse shows. He also, however, does Stargirl and Doom Patrol, which is a good thing. He has 6 other projects announced, 1 in post and 3 in pre-production. He's got 26 writer credits, the creative developer of all of the Arrowverse shows, however, also Stargirl. He has a story screenplay for the terrible Green Lantern film. And so far, 1 story for Superman and Lois isn't listed yet on IMDb for anything else. He has won awards. In 2018, he won the Black Reel Television Awards for Television, Outstanding Drama Series for Black Lightning, which is one of the ones he's a creator and whatnot on. In terms of the writing itself, I have to call out the nuclear meltdown. As always, writers don't understand what meltdowns are. They are not because things get too hot and cause a nuclear fission explosion. Please, guys, Google, or better yet, go to DuckDuckGo.com and look up nuclear meltdown for the details on the science of this. You got it wrong again. I do have to wonder, did it have to be Lex Luthor the first time out? I maybe would have saved him for later. But that said, I didn't realize looking at it that it was Luthor until it was told to the audience at the end. But again, I probably would have saved that reveal for later in the series, or maybe brought Luthor on as a villain much later. I don't think you have to use him necessarily right out of it. See you later, Alexa. Great to have you in here. Alexa has a channel on YouTube that I like very much, where she does reactions to movies and TV series. Great channel. I'll link to her when I get done here. Definitely go watch her stuff. I think she's very interesting. Not only does she have emotional reactions to some stuff, but she's very, very, very intelligent and will give you information, and talk about things much the way I tend to do, frankly. I am curious about this Luthor's backstory, because it is not the Arrowverse Luthor. In fact, this whole series, near as I can tell, it has no relationship to the Arrowverse whatsoever. In the Arrowverse, the last time I looked, and I pay almost no attention to it, aside from reviewing Batwoman, which thank God I'm not going to do anymore. But it's not the Arrowverse, Superman and Lois, even though they're played by the same actors. Because the last time I looked and happened to watch, it was Crisis on Infinite Earths. And Superman and Lois only had a single son named Jonathan, not twins. And in any case, this is 15 years later than that, if it was in that same timeline at all. And this is a totally different Luthor. And Clark doesn't even suspect this guy is Luthor, and he doesn't have the same way of doing things. He's Captain Luthor for something. So I think there's some totally different backstory that's going to be thrown here. But it is nice to have an air of mystery about this. I have to, because of the people involved and how they've all been doing, Arrowverse shows, I cross my fingers that it doesn't go out that direction. But so far, this episode was great. I have to caution the writers about using too many modern cultural references. Using video games, showing them, that's going to date the show very rapidly. Using modern slang, for example, digits for phone number or just number, will date the show quickly. Modern slang will date it. Those things really only seem cool now. 5 years from now, not so much. I must caution the writers about the locale. Don't dress people in so much flannel. I'll talk about that a little bit when I get to costumes. People in the rural areas dress basically almost exactly the same as in urban areas. Kansas do not have a southern accent. One character in here does have a bit of one. Kansas accent is very, very similar to the general American accent. It is similar to the accent, my natural accent, that I sometimes slip into when I'm not concentrating on trying to have a general American accent. It doesn't come completely flowingly off the tongue for me. But they don't have a southern accent. If you need help with that, please contact me for vocal coaching and my contact form on sylranch.tv. Kansas, by the way, is not a dairy state, guys. Got to caution you. It's a plains state. Farmers and ranchers grow stuff like this and ranch cattle. The dairy barn that they show here is not even remotely accurate. Do an image search on Google or DuckDuckGo.com for modern dairy farms. You will discover they look absolutely nothing like that barn. Modern agriculture uses dedicated heavy equipment and rarely, if ever, uses equipment that it can fit in a barn and is attached to a tractor. Please Google this, DuckDuckGo it, or contact me at sylranch.tv for the details. They have, however, been very kind to those of us who live in areas that are rural or close to us. Please do continue doing this. I love you. Thank you very much. If you have any questions about how to keep doing that, please contact me on my contact form at sylranch.tv. I would appreciate it. This is just a totally different thing. People always talk about, Superman is so overpowered. He's got this power, he's got that power, he's got that power. That's true, but there is a way to resolve this that limits it down to actually one power that really explains all the others. And I take my cues on this from Dr. James Kakaklios, who has done a book and has a video on YouTube called The Science of Superheroes. And it isn't where he poo-poos the science or anything like that. He says, okay, let's give a superhero a one-time miracle exemption from the laws of nature. So the Flash can run super fast, even though that's impossible and all kinds of other stuff that scientifically would make that hard. Let's just assume that he has a one-time miracle exemption. And he does that for a lot of superheroes. But then, I asked him at a convention, I actually said to him, if you're going to give a one-time exemption from laws of nature for Superman, what would that be? Because he's got so many powers. And he said, somebody else, another physicist, but I found the article, had suggested that his one-time miracle exemption from the laws of nature is that Superman can control inertia. And if you think about it, that actually does solve all the problems with his superpowers. Heat vision, well, that's changing the inertia between his eyes and the target that he's shooting at. Super strength, that's just changing the inertia of whatever he's lifting. And in fact, that causes the problem of if he's going to lift a boat or something like that, if he tries to lift it in real life from the front, it would just tear off the boat. But if you can change inertia, then it doesn't matter where you pick the boat up from. The inertia of the object has changed. Flying, well, that's just changing your inertia to go this, that, or the other direction. Super speed, you're changing your inertia. Everything that Superman does can be boiled down to one superpower. He can actually just control inertia. I would love to see the guys on this show do that sometime. That would be kind of fun. Get into the acting of the show. Well, Superman Clark Kent is played by Taylor Hoechlin. His credits are 1998 to present as active. He has 37 credits for multiple episodes of TV series and recurring characters. He's done the other Arrowverse shows as Superman. However, again, this show does not appear to be attached to the Arrowverse. It's kind of interesting. I guess they decided they had these two actors who seemed to get the characters, and they took them over for this show, but it doesn't actually connect to the Arrowverse at all. He has won awards in 2013. He won Best Cast Ensemble for Teen Wolf. What was the actual award? The Young Hollywood Awards, because he's been around. He's not an old guy or anything. And in 2014, he won the Teen Choice Awards for Male Scene Stealer. His performance as Superman and Clark is very good. I like it very much. We don't really get to see him acting, kind of bumbling and stuff like Clark. And I don't think that there's any real reason to do that here. To be honest, there's no real reason, now that his kids know, there's no real reason for him to wear his glasses around that ratch very much at all. You'd want to grab him when you had a visitor or something, and you'd want to, behave a little differently when you had a visitor. But when it's just the four of them around, why wear them? So we don't see much of that bumbling stuff except at the very beginning. Thought that was good. He's a good Superman in terms of, he has a certain level of presence. He's not Christopher Reeve. Nobody ever will be. There's no way for anybody to top Chris Reeve's performance. There never will be. Just done. But he's good at it. I like what he's doing with this role. Drop 2 says he can also control the inertia of what he's holding, or the people or airplanes would disassemble. Yeah, exactly. If he picks up a boat in the middle of the boat, well, the torque forces are going to cause basically the boat to start coming down around him. But if he can control the inertia of what he's touching, then it doesn't matter. He can pick it up anywhere he wants by one hand. The control of inertia should be Superman's one miracle exemption from the laws of nature that explains all of his powers. X-ray vision, heat vision, all of it. Should explain it all. Then we have Lois Lane, played by Elizabeth Tulloch. Her credits: she was active 2001 to present. 36 acting credits, many for TV series with recurring roles or as lead. She is Lois Lane in the Arrowverse shows. However, again, this show does not seem to have any connection to that. She did 124 episodes of the TV series Grimm, 15 episodes of the 2007, and this one was really interesting to me, of the 2000 web series Lonely Girl 15 as Aunt, my makeshift thing here, school back, Aunt Alex. Now, if you're not familiar with the Lonely Girl 15 show series, that was very interesting and rather groundbreaking. Because at that time, YouTube was primarily being used for people who were vlogging. A lot of teenage girls would come in and just talk about their day and stuff like doing this and doing that. I think you can still find it on YouTube. I'm not sure. I haven't looked. But Lonely Girl 15 was the first one where they had a girl who was acting. She was not she was playing a character. She was not the person that she pretended to be, but it was all very genuine, looked totally normal. And then it started taking a turn. After a number of, vlogs that she did, it would take a turn, and you wound up in an actual plot. And it was for a long time. There was a lot of controversy about, is this woman real? Is what's happening in her life real? Because she's, the first stuff she put out was just, average everyday vlog stuff. It was by a girl who had a level of charisma. But is this real? Is stuff happening? Because she's talking about abusive stuff. Is that happening in her real life? And it wasn't until much later in the series that they kind of went, oh, okay, this is clearly just a web series. It's an experimental web series doing something that no one had ever done to that point. And it spawned a number of imitators trying to do the same thing. It was a fascinating series at the time. I remember it burned into my brain because of what they did. It was very cool. So she was involved in that. She's won no awards. Her performance as Lois is fine. I like it very much. It's going to be very interesting to see how we juxtapose this person who has been a very aggressive reporter and turn her into the wife of a farmer. That's going to be really interesting. I'm going to talk about Superman's muscle suit. That sucks. That's one of the things that sucks. I'm going to talk about that. Jonathan Kent, the first of the twins, is played by Jordan Elsas. His credits are active 2014 to present with 28 acting credits. He has 1 in post, 1 in pre-production. He did 8 episodes of Panic and 7 episodes of Little Fires Everywhere, has won no awards. I like his performance as Jonathan Kent. He is the jock brother who is kind of jockey, but he's also very protective of his younger brother. They clearly have a good relationship. He calls them names sometimes, but geez, the number of times I called my sister names and didn't really mean it. They've got a good relationship, and it works out. It's played well. I like what he's doing. I'm sure I'm going to like more of it as we go along. Jordan Kent is played by the second son, the one who has superpowers eventually. He's played by Alex Garfin, who was active. Sorry, my makeshift teleprompter got past it. From 2010 to present, he's done several episodes of various series. He was the voice of Linus in the 2015 Peanuts movie. And this is his first recurring supporting or / lead role. He has won an award in 2016. He won the Best Young Ensemble Cast Voice Over Award for the Peanuts movie playing Linus. And again, I like his performance just good. Hits on a weird thing for me because, as most of my longtime viewers know, I have a problem with one of the reasons that I can't work right now is I have a problem with a very severe anxiety disorder. I'm unclear that it's being played 100% true, but then I can only judge by my anxiety disorder, and I know there's a lot of different ways that comes out. I like the fact that, he's sort of connecting with that girl, who I'll mention in a moment, in a way that is realistic to me. I hope she dumps her boyfriend for him. But I like his performance as basically a child teenage actor. I think he's doing a good job. Again, he's got that relationship with his father. He is pissed off at his brother, rather. He's pissed off at his father, does that well, and it's organic, and I don't see him, struggling to do that. I think it's coming naturally, so good for him. Drop True says, these reviews of yours are detailed. Reduce these down to 15-minute videos and your subscribers will build it, and they will come. This is the type of reviews I always used to do. Getting it down to 15 minutes is hard because of all the people I'm talking about. Kyle Cushing, the wife of a woman who is Lana Lang, was Lana Lang, is played by Eric Valdez. He was active 2004 to present, has 19 acting credits, some for TV series with recurring or lead roles. He did 11 episodes of Graceland and 99 episodes of General Hospital. Hold the phone. When you're doing, one of the things that actors will tell you is that doing a soap is a great way to learn, because you're doing things very rapidly, and every day you've got a new script, and you have to be able to learn to act. Really have to learn if you're going to stay doing that. They always say it's a great training ground. So the way he's acting here is perfectly natural. No problem with it at all. And the way he's portrayed and his objections to, people leaving Smallville, hey, perfect. No problem. My only thing about you is, dude, Kansans do not have a Southern accent. Their accent is very similar to the general American. You'll find me slipping into it sometimes. And contact me for voice coaching if you want to. Contact form at sylranch.tv. Marshall says, I'm just snoozing in the green room. Well, you know how it goes with these, Marshall. This is one that was so good, I just couldn't not do this. Sarah Cushing, the young pseudo-love interest, is played by Indy Navarrete. She was active, God, I'm getting old, 2018 to present, with 7 acting credits. Some with multiple for TV series with lead or recording characters. Did 13 episodes of 13 Reasons Why and 10 episodes of Denton's Death Date. No awards. Performance good. Again, no problem with these younger actors. I think they're doing very good. Somebody who is confiding something very personal about herself to another guy who also has basically the same problem, bringing them together a bit. I hope she dumps her boyfriend. I want to see her getting together with Jordan. Luthor is played by, I'm not sure how this pronunciation is. It wasn't in IMDb nor Wikipedia. I think it's Wole Parks. He was active 1999 to present. 35 acting credits, some with multiple or TV series with lead or recurring roles. Did 13 episodes of Devious Maids. He played Nate in the 2019 short Virtuality, and 35 episodes of As the World Turns. So again, we have a guy who has been working. He has an award, 2019. He won Best, for Escape Velocity, he won the Best Actor in Virtuality, rather. Performance is good for what we see. We don't really see him very much, so I'm sure we're going to see him more. I'll have more to say about him. Director of this episode was Lee Toland Krieger. He was active 2006 to present. Again, I feel so old. 10 producer credits. He exec produced this episode of Superman and Lois. He has done 20 episodes of You, 19 episodes of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and he's producer-director for December Ends in 2006. He has 17 director credits, with listing so far 2 episodes of Superman and Lois and 4 episodes of Rivendell, something else. He's got a lot of other ones. And was the screenwriter for That Vicious Kid in 2009. He's won awards in 2006. He won the Method Fest Best Picture Award for December Ends. And in 2009, he won the... sorry, I can't see it past my freaking thing. The Denver International Film Festival Best Screenplay Award for That Vicious Kind. His direction here is good. Here's the thing about it. I was so generally interested in the story that I had a hard time really concentrating on the directing. What I can say is it was definitely good. There was nothing in here that I looked at and said, oh, God, that's a terrible way to do that. I think everything that he did was great. No problems here. Nothing that really jumped out at me as, wow, that was an amazing shot. But at the same time, nothing that said to me that this was just absolutely wrong. So I think he did a very good job. Director of photography is Gavin Struthers. His credits, he's been active, from 1996 to present, 44 cinematography credits. Hey, he did an episode of Doctor Who, The Power of Three, which was the episode right before Amy and Rory left. He's done 11 episodes of Black Sails and 29 episodes of Holby City, and he has 12 camera and electrical department credits, no awards. Now, as I often say, the director's job is to say, I want to get this shot. And the cinematographer's job is to say, here's how I'm going to do that shot. And in a really good movie like Superman in 1978, you have a working environment where the two of them are inspiring each other. They're saying, well, I want this shot. And the cinematographer says, well, I can get that shot. But what if we tried it just a little bit differently? And they get something that's really wonderful. I don't know if that's going on here, but what I can say is cinematography was fine. I have no problems with the cinematography. Again, nothing that really jumped out at me. But again, it was good. Nothing had said to me it was bad either. Production designer, here we get into some stuff I can actually critique about, was Dan Hermanson. His credits are he's active from 1998 to present, 22 art director credits, did 8 episodes of a series of unfortunate events. He did all of the episodes of the 2008 miniseries The Andromeda Strain. That was a later adaptation of the Robert Wise film, The Andromeda Strain. I preferred the Robert Wise version. However, I've seen them both. 2008 one isn't bad. It's an updating. He has 5 production designer credits, and he lists 2 episodes of Superman and Lois for this, and 10 episodes of Supernatural, and he has 14 art department credits, no awards. I found his the production design real good. He is being kind to small towns. It would be very easy to make it look hicky and stupid, and he hasn't done that. He's captured what a decent small town with a decent community in it, looks like, or maybe one that's starting to lose people, what it looks like. I think that's very good. You go to the, Smallville, it looks very, very similar to the downtown area of many small towns that I've been to in the Midwest and ones I've lived in. Great, awesome. I find the direction, the production design of the Kent farm and its surroundings, ever since 1978, no production designer has ever strayed very far from this. You can't see it very well because of where this is. Let me pull this over to the other side real quick. Oops. No production designer has ever strayed very far from what you see back here. You got the house, you got the barn, there's a road leading from it to the main road. No production designer has ever strayed very far from that. It's very similar, no problem with that at all. Because that, again, it reminds me very much of what I really experienced when I was spending time at my grandparents' cattle ranch. One thing, as I mentioned, Kansas is not a dairy state. If you want to go to dairy, go to Minnesota, go to Wisconsin, someplace like that. It is a plains state. It's like this. It's flat. Farmers grow grains. Ranchers ranch cattle. And again, the dairy farm barn is not even remotely accurate. Those don't look like that anymore. That's a small one. If people are really dairy farming, that's what they're doing. It's a huge barn with 100 milking stations, lots of concrete, and a very large vat that the milk goes into. Really big. This is no longer subsistence level farming, guys. This is scientific farming. If you want to know about it, contact me, sylranch.tv. Modern agriculture uses a lot of dedicated heavy equipment and rarely ever uses equipment that you can find in a barn and attached to a tractor. Please Google this. Contact me. I will tell you all about it. Otherwise, production design was great. Interior of the Kent home, again, they haven't really strayed very much in terms of the way that looks since 2008. But that's okay, because I go out there today, I can see the same things. That's fine. It's realistic. Music is by Dan Romer. His credits are, he was active. I didn't catch it. I missed putting it up. He has 40 composer credits. He's going to be doing the music for all 15 episodes of this first block that have been ordered for Superman and Lois. He's done 51 episodes of The Good Doctor, 28 episodes of Atypical, and has 11 music department credits. He has won awards. In 2012, he won the Awards Circuit Community Awards for Best Original Score for sorry about this, The Beasts of the Southern Wild, won the Los Angeles Film Critics Association Award, Best Music for Beasts of the Southern Wild. 2013, he won the Alliance of Women Film Journalists Best Film Score Award for Beasts of the Southern Wild. Also won the World Soundtrack Award, Discovery of the Year Award for Beasts of the Southern Wild. Won the Georgia Film Critics Association Best Original Score Award for Beasts of the Southern Wild. Won the International Online Cinema Awards Best Original Score for Beasts of the Southern Wild. In 2015, he won the Hollywood Music and Media Awards Best Original Score Feature Film for Beasts of the Southern Wild. And in 2017, we broke away from that. He won the Ghent International Film Festival Award Best Music for Asaramba. He also won the International Documentary Association Best Music Award for Brimstone and Glory. His music here is fine. There is nothing here that jumps out at me. It's not John Williams stuff where it's like, wow, what incredible music. It's good for what it does. It's fine. I have no problems with it. There's nothing in here that I say this is maestro level stuff. But again, what I really tend to watch for is two things. Is it maestro level or is it something that's just wrong? Neither of these. The music is fine. No problems. Special effects coordinator is Dan Sedlak. However, he's leading a team. In IMDb, it's impossible to make an idea what the general special effects were. Special effects here are fine. It's not like Batwoman, where the special effects look like they're done at Adobe After Effects, and they're terrible. Special visual effects coordinator. Special visual effects, rather, are provided by Zoic Studios. Impossible to know who's responsible for what. And again, special effects, special visual effects, they're all good. There's nothing here that takes you out of the moment. There's nothing that looks bad like everything on Batwoman. Costume designer is Katrina McCarthy. She has 48 costume designer credits, 13 episodes she's going to be doing of Superman and Lois. Did 26 episodes of A Million Little Things, 10 episodes of the 2018 series The X-Files, the 2018 version, and has 11 costume and wardrobe credits with no awards. The costumes here are fine. Again, I have to caution against using too much flannel. People in rural areas don't dress any differently than people in metro areas. They don't. It's all the same. They get the clothes from the same places. Use regular clothes. Just, it was a little much. Scale it back. It's not horrible. Just scale it back. The Superman costume is clearly a muscle suit, and it's bad. It looks bad. Tyler Hoechlin is obviously in a muscle suit when he's Superman. He looks significantly too large for his civilian clothes, and the muscle suit looks fake. This is probably in response to criticism that he got when he was in the Arrowverse, particularly in Crisis on Infinite Earths, when he was being compared to Tom Welling and Brandon Routh, who are both muscular, appropriately muscular for Superman. He looks small by comparison. Now, you could get away with a muscle suit in The Adventures of Superman in the 1950s when you had crappy, low-def analog broadcast television. But you can't do that in 1080p when we're bordering on 4K. Either put Hoechlin on Chris Reeve's bodybuilding regime or just lose that muscle suit. It looks terrible. And if you want to put him on his bodybuilding machine, I have links in my description box below to 3 different videos where they go over the Superman bodybuilding regime. So do that. Guys, I'm sorry. Put the trunks back on Superman's costume. I know some people think it looks weird, but frankly, Superman does not look like Superman without the trunks. Put them back. Luthor's armor suit looks plastic. That may be part of the visual effects. I don't know. But it's bad. Do something about that. And again, don't use as much flannel in Kansas and Smallville scenes. Otherwise, I thought the costumes were fine. There was no problem with the costumes. They look perfectly natural for the people wearing them. Again, not so much flannel, guys. Getting close to the end here, the key makeup artist is Trisha Porter. Her credits are she's active 2004 to present, has 20 makeup credits, and has, among others, 141 episodes of Supergirl, and has won no awards. Okay. And 2 things. Superman Clark Kent's stubble. Get rid of it. It looks dumb. I'm sorry, Superman shaves, period. I don't even know. I guess that it's like fashionable for men now? Maybe? I've never understood it. I didn't understand it in the 80s. I don't even understand how you get it. I mean, I'm doing work here to get my beard to come out the way it is. If I wanted to get a stubble, I don't know what I would do. I don't think my beard trimmer goes low enough to get an actual stubble. I don't know why anybody does that, and certainly it's out of character for Superman. Lose it. He's clean-shaven, period. And then there are the character ages. We see at the beginning of this Superman, who typically in the comics is portrayed as perennially 28 or 29 years old. And when he comes to Metropolis, that's about how old he is. He's in his 20s. He doesn't look like he's in his 20s. When he meets Lois Lane, he looks like he's in his 30s or his 40s. So does she. And now we've got this show that's 15 years later, and they're talking about how he isn't aging, but Lois is. and neither of them look like they have changed at all from when we first saw them. You should have done some de-aging. If you're going to take them back in time to when they first were made, and you only have like 1/4 of a scene, like 20, 25, 30 seconds of that, just de-age them. Take away the wrinkles. You know, they do it all the time. Tom Hanks is looking young when he's old. So that's the base of the review here. Yay, took about an hour, 50 minutes or so. You have just seen one of my more long-form reviews, but it was worth it because this is a good show. We ask at the end, is it any good? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, you should watch this show. For the first time since 1978, they are finally getting Superman right. This is a great show so far. This is an awesome episode. You should definitely watch this show. Turn off Batwoman. Let the ratings go into the tank. Let them have a third season even though nobody's watching. Don't watch it. I'm stopping because I got something good to watch. This one, my scale is much higher. Batwoman, it was 1 is existentially bad. You could die from watching it, with 5 being just barely passable. This one, I would give, my scale is 1 is passable and 5 is Hugo Award worthy. Not the Emmys. Frack the Emmys. They don't matter. The Hugo Award is the one that I care about. Now, because of that, I give this episode a 4. It's not going to win any Hugos, but it's a damn fine episode. It is the best live-action Superman put to the large or small screen since Donner's 1978 Superman. It is absolutely the best since then. Nobody has done it very well since then. This one, they finally get it right. At least they have in this first episode. This is also the best Superman on screen since the Superman the Animated Series and the DCEU in general. That was the best Superman since the Donner movies. This is not as good as that, but it is really good. For live action, it is the best. Superman and Lois isn't as good as the DCEU, but it is really, really good. With that, I must say, I remain a bit nervous. It is still possible to frack this up all the way as other Arrowverse shows have been fracked up, particularly considering that the producers and some of the people involved have been fracking up the Arrowverse shows for years. But I am, given what we saw tonight and the fact that we are not falling into this rather formulaic, you got the hero and the supporting characters circling around them who are the brains behind the outfit and all that. That's not happening here. This is a totally different dynamic. We're looking at a family drama show, really, with the superpowers and supervillains thrown in. Awesome. I am on board for this. I am cautiously optimistic. Great show. Watch it. Do not watch Batwoman anymore. I'm so glad to have that monkey off my back. I had an alarm that was telling me, oh, God, it's an hour to Batwoman. And I'd be like, oh, no. This one, I'll have an alarm that says it's an hour to Superman and Lois. I'll be, yes, I'm all ready. I'm waiting to go. Awesome, great, perfect. Wonderful, wonderful show so far. Do watch it. So, that said, hey, Marshall, you asked me to give you a yell from the green room. I'm about to start a conversation with my dear old friend, Marshall Presnell, about cryptocurrency and related similar subjects. Marshall, just giving you a warning here, Marshall. I'm going to do an introduction, and then I'm going to see if I can give you a call. We did a little bit of Skyping earlier today to make sure that it looked like it was going to work. Drop 2 says, all I want to know is how to use Bitcoin to purchase real physical things. Good luck. We have Bitcoin credit cards here in Australia, but almost no one uses them. And you're set, Marshall. Cool. Marshall has been in IT probably longer than I have. I quit. He's still going. He has at least 40 years experience building software platforms and is very current on current technologies. I know that for a fact. He worked on the original Mosaic web browser at the company Spyglass. He created the very first interactive webcast platform in 1999, which was webcast.com. It's still being used today by PGI.com. It's a substandard implementation of the original project. I've known Marshall for a long time. I guess about 30 years, since the 1990s. We met by virtue of being involved in the very first International Star Trek Forum on a network that no longer exists called FidoNet. And that one was so large because it was international. Marshall was the overall moderator of that thing, and you couldn't moderate it with just one person. So he drafted a few of us to do it for him. And so I've been in communication with I was a vice moderator for a while there. And so I've been in communication with Marshall off and on over the years, more recently pretty frequently. He's a very, very old friend, a guy who knows a lot about more crypto than I do. In point of fact, just as the introduction here, because Marshall knows this, everybody who watches the show knows this. I never thought Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies were going to go anywhere. My feeling was you're talking about a few milliamps of current sustained over a few microseconds of time. That is a fiat currency that represents precisely dick. And it doesn't. It represents absolutely nothing. I thought, nobody's going to buy electricity. No, I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. And Marshall was right, and he's made a fair amount of money over it. So, let me see if I can get Marshall on the horn, and we will talk about this stuff from somebody who actually did well at it and was right when I was completely wrong. He will be audio only. Hey, Marshall, are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you fine.
Okay,
I had
perfect.
the other one on for a second and got a little confused.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So, yes, here we have drum roll. Yes, Marshall, how are you doing tonight? Aside from
doing
waiting
pretty
through
well.
my terminal review.
The green room needs paint now. From where I was chewing it on the wall. But other than that, it's fine.
Well, feel free to paint it.
I can't. I'm not in the green room anymore. Sorry. Your job.
Okay. Yeah.
I only bitch after the fact.
I've been wrong. You've been right.
And right now we're in the middle. And right now we're in the middle of what is commonly known on YouTube as the Bitcoin bloodbath. We dropped off of an all-time high of about $58,000 down to $46,000 after a run-up from $3,000. I don't exactly consider that a bloodbath, but everybody on YouTube's losing their mind, and I'm sitting here going like, guys, stay in.
Yeah.
And everybody just, they don't get it. And I didn't get it either. I had your opinion, and your opinion was, milliamps of current over microseconds, and boy, was I wrong. And I tried
but you figured out how to be right and make money off of it, and I just went, no.
Well, that's easy. Making money off Bitcoin is easy. First of all, anytime you're trading currencies between, U.S. dollar and Bitcoin, or U.S. dollar and Ethereum, or Bitcoin and Ethereum, it doesn't matter what the pair is. Anytime you're trading it, it's basically a foreign exchange, or forex in the financial world. And 97% of any market, a financial market particularly, is psychological. 97%. I've seen people say 99. I've seen people say 90. It really is a crap load of percentage, and the rest is technicals. And what I mean by technicals is looking at the price, looking at the candlesticks, looking at derivatives from that price, like the relative strength indicator, the MACD, or the exponential moving average, and coming up with an algorithm. Don't everybody freak out. It's not a computer algorithm. An algorithm is simply a set of instructions.
Right.
And you find the range that Bitcoin is trading in, and you buy high and sell low. I'm sorry. If you're a YouTuber, you buy high and sell low. If you're a normal person, you buy low and sell high. It's weird. People do buy high and sell low, and it drives me up the wall.
I
But
don't understand it either. That's the one thing I know is you buy low and sell high on anything.
Exactly. But about, I hang on a second. I've got my chart up here. I can tell you when it happened.
Your question, by the way, Drop of Truth, convert Bitcoin into dollars or another currency so I can buy
Easy
real things. Basically, yes.
Yeah. I'll get into the mechanics of that in just a second because it really is not hard, but there are certain things you have to be aware of. And they're significant things, especially when it comes to taxes. But I noticed something November of 2018, and that is that one of my indicators that I reliably use for trading dropped down to a low I'd never seen before. And it's called the RSI, the Relative Strength Indicator, and it dropped down to below 10. Now, what does that mean? Well, anytime you're below 30, you're considered oversold. I mean, oversold. Oh, no, overbought. I get them confused. And if you drop down to 10, it's like, holy crap, something's going to happen. But my algorithm wouldn't allow me to get in there. And that algorithm was the exponential moving average has to have a positive slope, says you're in a bull market. Then the relative strength indicator has to drop below 30, and then it has to exit that and go above 30. And then this indicator called the MACD, or moving average convergence divergence, has to cross over the signal line. At that point, if everything's right and you hold your jaw just right, you get in and you ride it up, basically riding the price point and riding the price action up to the point where it starts to peak out and drop, and then you get out. That's the algorithm. It's pretty simple, especially when you've got the charts from platforms like TradingView or something. You can just look at it and say, oh, that's what I do. And that's what I do. I become the computer that runs the algorithm. And I do that on a daily chart, not on an hourly or anything like that. You start playing anything less than a daily, and you start getting in the weeds.
Yeah, I would think.
So I played this technique, which I developed a long time ago in the stock market, and I basically, in that channel that kept going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, I was buying slightly above the low when it converted from down to up, and slightly before the high. So you don't be greedy.
Right.
And I made I don't have the number in front of me, but it's somewhere on the close order of about 20,000% gains on that in a relatively flat market. And that worked for a while. Yeah, it's bizarre. So I played that algorithm over and over and over and over and over again. I call it the grind. And about the early part of March last year, lo and behold, the RSI dropped. Let's see, where was it? Where did it drop to? Where is it? Get my finger on it. Down to about under 20. I can't tell because I have to scale this out, and I can't tell exactly where it was. But it was under 20. It jumped up over 30 again, which is the second trigger. At that point in time, the moving average was going up. So now I have two of the critical triggers. I waited for the MACD crossover, and I jumped in. That was, like I said, March of last year. The price then was $8,000.
You made money.
It is, yeah.
A hell of a lot of money.
But as you know, with any kind of system, you always basically you apply negative feedback to it. because you don't want it to oscillate out of control.
Right.
So you go back and start reviewing, why did it drop that low? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And
conditions cause it
interestingly,
to go down that way so we can predict it.
interestingly enough, at that point in time, the first COVID stimulus had hit on March 6th. And so the RSI dropped well below 30 on, God, it's hard to tell. But it was late February, and it popped up above on the 17th. So that obviously was a problem. Or it was a correlation. And in this case, it was a very strong correlation because it sent me down the rabbit hole. And this is where I learned what Bitcoin was. At the very beginning, I thought it was just, a lark, something you could make money with.
Right.
And about a month after that event, I finally figured it out. And then the world opened up.
Huh. So what did you figure out?
Well, we've talked privately before, and I tell you that Bitcoin is inversely related to fear.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, positively related to fear. As fear goes up, the price goes up. As uncertainty goes up, the price goes up. As doubt goes up, the price goes up. There's actually an indicator for that. And it's called the VIX, the Volatility Index.
Okay.
And I started looking at that, and that was incredibly correlated to everything going on. And then I noticed something very, very, very weird. I started noticing volume spikes, like people trading in huge volumes.
Right.
And I'm going, like, why the hell are they trading in huge volumes? This thing is a horizontally moving market. Because at that point in time, up until about, I'd say, September of last year, it was slowly trending upward, but it wasn't anything major. But I was noticing these volume spikes. It made no sense to me. So that got me into another little thing called on-chain analysis. And Bitcoin is a blockchain, like almost all cryptocurrencies are. And if we need to get into the technicals of that, we can do it lightly. But the key aspects of a blockchain is it is completely public. It shows every single transaction. It is secure because it uses cryptography in several different aspects that make it damn near impossible to forge.
Right.
And it is validated by a process that takes a lot of time and a lot of computational capability. You say it's a few milliwatts. It isn't. It is megawatts over a 10-minute period. Right. And
So
a lot of people can't handle that. A lot of computers can't handle it.
Right.
And that difficulty increases over time, and we're coming up to a time when it's going to increase again. So the miners are going to have to work twice as hard after this particular cycle than they
put
did
even
this
more
particular.
power into it and cost just because of the power and
So then, and I think you have interesting thing, drop of truth. You say Bitcoin is only valuable when it's trading. An old friend of mine who played the stock market told me the golden rule of trading is you only make money or lose money when the price is changing. Period. If it's stable, you're not making anything.
Right.
And yes, it does lose value if you realize the value. Now, what does that mean? There's unrealized profit or loss. If I buy at 100 and it goes down to 80 and I sell, I have lost. I mean, that is a realized value. If it starts at 100 and I buy in and it goes to 80 and then it goes to 120, and I do not sell it, it is an unrealized profit.
Right.
You only get taxed on realizing your profit. So,
which is why some people take losses on things in order to decrease the tax part of it.
Yeah, they change the tax burden. You bring up a drop of truth brings up a very good point. Why would a billionaire like Elon Musk use Bitcoin? And that's what I discovered. Could these people literally corner the market? No. Right. And the reason they can't corner the market is because there are so many, they're called miners, but think of them as validators. Don't think of them as miners. It puts a different thing in your mind. And those validators are validating the blockchain, the chain of transactions. You would need to possess control of 51% of those miners in order to have any chance of cornering the market. And notice I said any chance.
Right.
And even if
just the power requirements.
But even if you manage to get a bad block in, eventually you will lose the gamble. And one of the other miners out there will get a good block in and basically erase all the work you've done. Because you have to build on the work that has happened before. And you have to fake it every time. And that's every 10 minutes you have to fake it. And the odds are you're not going to be able to fake it continually for, 1,000 blocks. Right. You're going to lose that lottery probably within 2 to 3 blocks. And at that point in time, the entire system reverts to the correct blocks. And you're blacklisted, by the way.
Right.
So that 51% gets blacklisted. So, no, ain't going to happen.
So Musk is probably just get into it because he foresees a large jump in value.
Nope. Has nothing to do with seeing a large chunk of value.
Oh.
And yeah, that's what I would have thought. What I also noticed in 2020 was we were starting to get some very bad economic indicators in the real world. And have you got that? Can you bring that slide up?
The Fred one?
No, not the Fred one. The other one. Now,
sure.
I can't actually watch the screen. So tell me when you get it up.
It's up. It's the longest economic expansion on record, ended by COVID-19 chart is what I have.
If you take a look at that graphic, no, it's go down. It's the line graph one that shows the really bad bump at the end.
This one.
Well,
economy grew from mid 2009 into early 2020.
Do you see
got
the
a big dip at the bottom down here?
Yeah. The economic growth has plummeted.
Yeah.
And to take a really good look at that chart, because it goes 0, 5, 10, 30.
Right.
So there's it's much bigger than you think it is. So we have this really large economic problem with unemployment going through the roof, productivity going through the floor. People are desperate, and that's one of the reasons they had the stimulus. So I started putting all that together, and it's like, wow, all we need to do is have a highly inflationary economy or dollar, and we would be totally screwed.
Well, which is damn near a given at this point.
Well, it's more than damn near a given. Bring up that slide.
Yep.
It's the Fred one.
The Fred one.
Yeah.
Fred is up.
Okay. If you take a look at that last little piece, it is not a... It literally is
where
not a sloping line.
it suddenly goes damn near asymptotic.
It is a vertical line, and we've quadrupled the available money supply. We've printed, a huge amount of money.
Which will absolutely lead to inflation. That's the cause of inflation. They don't teach that anymore, but the cause of inflation is having too much money in circulation.
Correct. Now, and Bill knows this, but the rest of you don't, and I knew it, and the rest of you may not. But Bitcoin is limited. There can only be 21 million coins in existence. This is not a choice that is made by people. It is a side effect of the algorithm itself. You cannot have more than 21 million coins in existence. What does that mean? That means that Bitcoin is by nature deflationary.
Right. You can't get enough in circulation to get hyperinflation.
Correct. So, the answer to your question, drop of truth, why did Elon Musk drop 1.3 billion into Bitcoin? He sees a storm coming, and he sees a currency that is not subject to inflation, and he knows what's going to happen in that situation, and you should too. You're going to have an inflating currency that's going to drop in actual value, and you have a deflationary currency that's going to maintain or increase in value. Where do you put your money?
Right.
Now, how does it become that way? Well, there's several different things, and I did a lot of research in this during this little ramp up.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research on it. You have to understand what money is. Money is sheep's, wheelbarrows, gold, and effort. That's all it is.
Right.
It is a non-fungible thing. By fungible, I mean it can be, a piece of gold is always worth a piece of gold, but now you have different weights and purities and things like that. But it's a 1 ounce piece of gold does not necessarily equal a 1 ounce piece of gold when it comes to value.
Right.
So it's non-fungible. You can't just simply swap the two pieces of gold and have the value transferred. You have to be very careful about it. But 12 chickens is not the same value today for this particular person as 12 chickens might be tomorrow for a different person.
Right.
You do it at the right day, you can probably get, an old internal combustion car. You do it the other day and you might get a wheelbarrow.
Right.
So it's non-fungible. It doesn't interchange well. Currency, however, is highly fungible. Means a dollar is a dollar is a dollar, and it represents the same relative value store as you pass it around. So I give Bill $1, he can then give Drop of Truth $1, he can give Alexa $1, and it comes back to me, and it's got the same value more or less. Well, the interesting things about currency, or dollars, or euros, or yen, or dinars, which is fiat currency,
Right.
is they are dictated their value by fiat, which is a decree. We hereby decree that this is the dollar of the United States of America, and we are not at this point backing it with any kind of physical money asset like gold. Therefore, we can determine what the value of that dollar is at any point in time by simply printing more and making it worth less.
Right.
Or taking it in and making it worth more.
Right.
Well, that's a national thing.
Yeah.
So what goes into it? It goes into the governmental system. The United States has the reference currency of the world. It's called the reserve currency, called the dollar. Right. The reason we have the reserve currency is a combination of two things: military might and stability of the economy.
Right.
That's the two key reasons we have the dollar as the reserve currency. The yen is not the reserve currency because, well, they don't have stability. They don't have, they don't have.
Yes.
No, they have the military might, but they have not shown they are willing to use it.
Right.
We have shown we're willing to use it. So we will fight if you come in and start to screw with it. They tend to be isolationists. They don't fight unless they have a distinct advantage or have to.
Right.
We're aggressive about it. So aggression actually made us the reserve currency of the world. Therefore, we are the reference currency of the world. The other currencies are not. But those other currencies are also dictated by national policy. How you handle the economy, how you handle inflation and deflation, how you peg this value to your centralized bank, and how it then can inflate out using fractional reserve techniques to get out to the end customer, which is you and me. Every one of those is different, which means every one of those values is different. It's constantly fluctuating based on psychology.
Right.
What if, and this is what Satoshi Nakamoto said in his paper, what if you had a non-national bound currency that was not controlled by humans, but was controlled by algorithm?
Right.
You have
Which is what we
certainty in
got.
how it's going to work. Certainty in how it's going to work. We know there's 21 million. That's it.
Right.
Period. That is it. Bitcoin was designed as a reserve currency of the planet. That's what a lot of people don't get.
Now, that makes sense to me. That makes sense. I don't know necessarily that a lot of people who invest in it necessarily understand that portion of it. It was always sort of bandied about, but most people that I know that are doing Bitcoin don't do it for that reason.
Right.
They see it as I did just until you described it now as a reserve currency, not a reserve currency, but a fiat. I'm sorry, an investment interested more than anything else. When in fact it is a guard against hyperinflation, really.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, let me give you some interesting numbers here. Very recently, a series of people have made predictions over where Bitcoin's price is going to be. And I got to be clear here. We are talking about Bitcoin exclusively. We're not talking about Ethereum or LTC or ADA
The
or
other
Pro.
cryptocurrencies,
We're not talking about those because they serve a completely different value proposition. Here are the estimates. The stock to flow model. Stock to flow does not mean stocks as in stock market. It means how much you have. Okay. So the Bitcoin stock to the amount of flow in and out. They are predicting by the end of this year a $289,000 Bitcoin price.
Good God.
And we are on track. We're actually ahead of track.
289,000. Wow.
Yeah. Now there is another group of people called ATH, and it's this particular prediction is called 18x by ATX. These are financial people who have moved into the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency realm, and they are predicting 360,000 by end of year.
Wow.
And then a name, and
my
then a
point
name.
003 crypto. Bitcoin might actually be worth something reasonable.
That's true. Now, here's a name you would not expect to be making predictions. Citibank.
Really?
I wonder what they're going to say. And when I saw this number, my jaw hit the floor because it confirms the other two. 318,000.
Wow.
By end of year.
God, I wish I had that time machine.
Yeah. So what's pushing this thing up? Because normal people cannot afford to push this thing up.
Right.
So I started looking at the blockchain itself, which is a list of every single transaction that's on the Bitcoin, and it's public.
Right.
And I noticed that there are a lot of what are affectionately called whales that are slowly levering into Bitcoin. And they finally start...
I don't know what a whale is in this context.
A huge investor, the Mark Cubans of the world, the Elon Musks of the world.
Okay.
These are whales.
Okay.
They are edging into Bitcoin. And very recently, we have found out that, we know Tesla has dropped 1.3 billion into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What you probably don't know is Citibank has put in over 1.3 billion. There's a company in, I think, New Jersey, and I cannot remember the name right now, but they have put 4.3 billion in over time. There's a company, and I believe it's either UAE or Dubai, that's going to be putting in over 4 billion.
Wow.
Institutionals and corporations are beginning to move into this.
They're foreseeing a massive hyperinflation, and they're trying to...
Bingo. They're saving their value.
Right.
Bitcoin is a value store because of its deflationary things.
Right.
Now, this is interesting, though. In the U.S. dollar, in the U.S. currency, we have the dollar, which is the baseline reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the lowest named currency is the cent, 1 penny. There is a lowest named currency in Bitcoin. It's called the Satoshi. And I bet you know where that came from. That is from the inventor,
Yeah.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay.
The value of a Satoshi is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. That would be 1 × 10⁸
Right.
Bitcoin. And you go like, oh, what difference does that make? You want to know the target that Satoshi has set for the price of Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I can tell you. I can tell you to the penny. One Satoshi, when it hits parity with 1 penny, that is his target value.
Huh.
$1 million.
Wow.
Now, what would be one of the aspects of a reserve currency? You can do very big things with very small numbers of Bitcoin.
Right.
You can do it at a sovereign level, at a national level. Okay, I need to give $323 billion. Okay, well, that's, 323,000 Bitcoin. It's a small number. People can easily figure it out. But you can also go up to the trillions without a problem.
Yeah.
That just points out that we're talking about this is designed to be the world's reserve currency. And because of the nature of what it is, how it is set, the algorithm that is fixed, the fact that it can't deflate or inflate, it's perfectly designed. It is a perfectly designed fiat currency. Now,
wow.
Is it any reason?
Had never gotten into it that deep. I get now how it's worth something.
And there's going to be a lot. In fact, okay, let's check the chat here. The Texas cornering of the silver market, that's very well documented, and you can't do it that easily. Fiat, Latin for arbitrary order or decree. Yep, it's a dictate. Right. Is Bitcoin linked to the petrodollar? The same way that any other currency is linked to the petrodollar. It's linked through the foreign exchange if it's not U.S. dollars. So the yen is linked to the petrodollar because you do a lot of trading between those currency pairs. Will it be affected when the global fiat Bitcoin? Actually, yes, it will be affected. It will go up like a skyrocket if the global fiat economy collapses. Right. Central banks now interested in their own cryptocurrencies. Take a look at Miami. Not just central banks, governmental organizations. Now in Miami, you have the option to take your pay in crypto. It's weird. And one thing, this is not a cashless thing. Here's the cool part about Bitcoin. You can take a piece of paper. Now think about the federal government. They take a piece of paper, they put special link on it, they embed it with all kinds of things, make it hard to counterfeit, and put the number 10 on it and hand it to you. You've got a $10 bill. You can do that in your house right now with Bitcoin. You can take a piece of paper, you can put 2 QR codes on it, seal it so that you can't see one of the critical QR codes, make it up all nice and fancy. Doesn't matter because that's not what makes this unique. It's the private key that's hidden. And you've got a crypto fiat currency that's paper. And you printed it on your printer. And it's just as valid as a U.S. Treasury note. I can print one of these things out, give it to Bill, and Bill can take it and scan in the private key, and he has total control over the amount of that wallet. Oh.
Again,
it's real. It's real currency.
Blown. This is a level I had never even thought to occur to think to me. You are so on top of this, it amazes me. I always say that I'm pretty bright. You're operating well above that. Here we have proof, because I never even occurred to me to go into this kind of depth.
Well, like I said, it took me months to figure it out. It's obvious in retrospect, but it's not obvious if you're looking forward.
Yeah, with you explaining it to me, okay. I get it. We're headed towards hyperinflation. What's happening is they're buying the Bitcoin because it can't inflate beyond a certain point.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if you have 10,000 in Bitcoin today and the dollar inflates 10x, you still have $10,000 in Bitcoin, but it's $10,000 the previous value reference because it has inflated along with everything else, giving you a stable currency.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, Bitcoin, as volatile as it is right now, Bitcoin's destiny is to become a stable currency.
Right.
And it's well on its way.
A very high value.
Okay, here's an interesting thing to do. And I want everybody to do this if you don't believe it, because when I did it, I didn't believe it. If you look on Wikipedia,
Mm-hmm.
and you search for the world's largest banks,
Mm-hmm.
okay? The top 4 are from China. And if you look at their assets under management, that is a fancy techno speak for how much is deposited here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little over $14 trillion. Okay, we're going to take everything to dollars for this conversation. So $14 trillion. Bitcoin's what they call in crypto market capitalization, is effectively the same as assets under management, which is how much is deposited in Bitcoin. It's over $1 trillion. So Bitcoin, this little flirty thing that Satoshi invented, a little over 10 years ago, has become 10% of the world's top 4 banks.
Wow.
And the global value store. Now it's going to get a little complicated to explain this. It's $100 trillion more or less.
Okay.
So that 14 trillion is 14% of the 100 trillion, and the 100 trillion and the 1 trillion of Bitcoin is 1% of the global. So you look at this and it's going nuts. Now imagine that when it gets to 200,000, 300,000, 500,000, 1 million.
Right.
It's going to be eating out that value store as people move to Bitcoin or an equivalent crypto or a different crypto.
Right.
Because people are going to see that this thing holds value.
Yeah.
So
well, their paper currency is
not
worthless.
And we're entering into the weirdest situation where a currency that I can print on my printer is more stable than the currency the government can print. Now let's think about that. Just how freaking ridiculous is that? Now this whole thing is part of a bigger plan. And I cannot definitively say that Satoshi et al. Thought this through. But what they have accidentally created, if they didn't design it this way, is they have created a decentralized, stable fiat currency in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now, if you put those words together, it makes no financial sense at all.
Right.
It's kind of like good, fast, cheap, pick any 2. Well, guess what? We can pick 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it's impossible, but if you look at the math behind it, it's very possible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the way you're describing it, I get it. It's just, I honestly, before you described it, I wouldn't have thought of it that way at all. But describing it out the way you are, man.
Now,
again, we're off into mind-blown territory.
This is science fiction to the nth degree.
Yeah.
This is using engineering, cryptography, and math to create something that literally should not be able to exist.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Now, the amazing part is Bitcoin is set up to be the world's reference of value store, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's an island in the middle of the lake, of the financial lake. What happens if you take that idea and start applying it in different ways? So you've got the security of Bitcoin, you've got the scalability of Bitcoin, and you've got the fungibility of Bitcoin. And that's the three big areas you want to be in.
Right.
Hear my cats?
Yeah, a little bit.
They get annoyed when I talk about fungibility. I can't help it. What if you took that idea and twisted it? Now, what I mean by twisting it is you do the same concept, but you apply it in a slightly different way.
Do you want me to spray you?
Welcome to Ethereum.
Really? What have they done differently then?
The
Ethereum,
whole
just
point of Ethereum,
anybody who's watching just know it's a different cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and it's around $1,400 a coin right now versus Bitcoin's 45.8. It's a much lower priced coin, but it's also a much newer coin, and its value proposition is much more subtle. Ethereum is basically a platform for, they call it smart contracts. I hate the term smart because everything is smart, and that makes everything dumb because the average is dumb.
Yeah.
Where they are, don't think of them as smart contracts. Think of them as algorithmically driven contracts. Okay. So I make an agreement with Bill that I'm going to give him 1 Bitcoin and he's going to give me a Ferrari. Wait, Ferrari? Wait, Ferrari? Well, the Ferrari itself can't be tokenized, but the title to it could.
Right, okay.
So they use a technique to digitally set up the title so that it can convey ownership via a cryptocurrency like Ethereum or like a derivative of Ethereum. And now they can set it up so that the two private keys basically are executed simultaneously against each other to make a swap. One Bitcoin for one Ferrari.
Oh, man.
And bam, it's done. It's not reversible in the context of that contract. Of course, I can turn around and sell the Ferrari back to you for a Bitcoin, but that contract is completed, it is executed, it is transferred, and it is legal.
A contract? Wow, that's... I mean, I get what you're saying there. You're doing the contracting not with necessarily a piece of paper that talks about the contract, but with the transaction itself being blockchain based.
It's called tokenization. Yeah. It's called the tokenization to digital asset. So if you can represent a Ferrari with the title of a Ferrari within an electronic form, you can then tokenize that electronic form and change its possession securely between people.
Wow.
Yes, here's about the time when the brains start exploding.
Yeah, well, mine started exploding a little bit ago, but I mean, I barely get what you're talking about with respect to the essentially transferring a contract into a electronic keychain, and I sort of get this. It's just mind-blowing to think about it.
It gets better.
I'm sorry?
It gets better.
Oh, it gets more mind-blowing than that?
This one will literally blow your mind. Okay, the first one was like, wow. The second one was like, oh crap. The third one is like, you've got to be flipping kidding me. Imagine a world where everything is decentralized. Everything is digitally tokenized. So your property, the deed of your property, is now in effect a cryptocurrency pair. Property for dollars, property for ownership. Now imagine that same world where you don't have to even go to a bank to close on a mortgage. You can simply execute a smart contract and say, I want 2 Bitcoins for my house. Bam, it's done. No financing, no banks, no nothing. You need a loan. Well, people can check you out to see how your balance is doing because it's all public. You know, it knows your wallet. I need a loan. And this is happening today, mind you. and I did this once, and it blew my flipping mind. I borrowed $100,000, and I returned it within 25 milliseconds.
Really?
Yeah. I borrowed $100,000 to do a 10x trade on Ethereum. So that means I was leveraged 10x. So I had $10,000 on the table. I leveraged 10x. It was $100,000. I wrote a contract. The contract said to a borrower, I want to borrow $100,000 for one transaction, and I will return it to you with interest. And the interest, because time was so fast, it was
came to practically nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it was like $50.
Yeah, for a $100,000 loan that you had for how many milliseconds?
27 milliseconds.
27 milliseconds as a borrower.
I executed the contract, and I haven't done this again because it scared the crap out of me. I executed the contract. I got basically an Ethereum balance transfer. I bought into a stock. It waited for the amount of time that was needed in order to, do the transaction. I switched. I switched my exchange from Binance.us to Coinbase because I was doing what's called an arbitrage thing.
Okay.
It then sold what I had just bought, 5 milliseconds ago on Coinbase for a profit. And then it repaid the loan and then deposited the results into my account. 27 milliseconds. Now, just for those who don't understand milliseconds, that's 1/1000th of a second.
Yeah.
This whole concept
wrapping
is
your head around it.
Yeah. Now, remember, no banks involved.
Right. Yeah.
None. I requested and received
borrowing
a loan
somebody from
$100,000 for 27 milliseconds, and paid the interest. And it was like $50, and I made I think I made like $1,200 on that trade.
Wow.
I mean, it's ridiculous. So this whole concept is called decentralized finance.
Man, the banks are going to be pissed off.
Banks can't touch it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Here's why banks can't touch it, and it's the smartest yet stupidest thing the SEC has ever done. They have not declared Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a currency. They've not declared it as a security. They have described it as an asset class. It is
legally
property.
I don't know.
Okay, you can regulate securities. You can regulate cash. You can't regulate property that easily.
So it's classified essentially as property.
Right.
And ordinarily property would have some a value attached to it that you would then maybe owe in property taxes for your house or something like that.
Correct. And every time you realize the gain, and in this case you realize it by the transfer of property into your primary wallet, let's call it, your primary accounts, it becomes a taxable event. Now, let's run this through real interesting. What happens when you apply smart contracts or algorithmically driven contracts to tax collection?
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, you can do it. You can simply say that any I'm going to call it smart contract, even though I hate the name. Any smart contract that transfers property must have this subroutine in it that is provided by the IRS.
So they would get a chunk of it by virtue of it being part of the crypto-driven contract.
Yeah.
And if they don't have the algorithm, the chunk of it to do it, which they won't, at least at first.
Well, okay,
it's hard for me to imagine, frankly, that people in government will even figure this out.
Oh, they'll figure it out. The IRS is ahead of almost everybody in crypto.
Okay.
They're really figuring it out. But here's the regulation part. The SEC comes in and says, okay, in order to transfer this asset class from person A to person B, or from wallet A to wallet B, we have to assess a tax. Therefore, we are requiring all of the miners, the validators, to ensure that a contract is not allowed into the chain unless it has this particular thing.
I see.
Bang, you do it.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm just giving you a taste. This is literally the tip of the iceberg. If you go
wrapping my head around
science,
just this portion of it, I can.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing in as much as I can think. Okay, what if you apply it to this? What if you apply it to that? And it just gets huge.
There is a trending topic now called NFTs, and everybody NFT this, NFT that, NFT this. And it's like, what the hell are NFTs? Because anytime. I am always trailing the leading edge. I'm close to it, but I'm trailing it because I want to thoroughly understand what's going on. I do not understand NFTs yet completely, but I get the idea. Imagine this. Imagine that you are an artist. No. Let's say you're a musician. Music can be represented digitally, natively, right?
Sure.
Anything that can be represented digitally is by definition able to be tokenized easily, right?
Right.
Think about it.
It would be a way to charge for certain types of music,
but
by virtue of it being... I'm sorry?
But not just once.
Yeah.
No. You could set it up. You could have a special audio player in a radio station. Now, whenever you play the music, the original author gets a transaction.
Right. Yeah.
Every time it is played. Every time it is transferred, you could have a royalty payment. So now book authors could write the book, sell it for basically the royalty because it's digital now.
Right.
And, okay, imagine a textbook. How many times that thing could be resold?
Oh, man.
And every time it is resold, the author
will
gets
get a piece
direct
of it.
payment. And the cool thing is it takes the publisher out of the loop.
Right.
This entire system, and I realize I'm sounding like an evangelist now, but I've looked into this. I want everybody to remember, if you were alive and you knew what was going on, back to the beginning of the internet.
Yeah.
There was one word that was associated with the business proposition for the internet. And if you remember it, amazing. If you don't remember it, you will when I say it. Disintermediation.
Oddly enough, I'd never heard that word.
Really?
Yeah.
Disintermediation, removing the middleman.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Amazon, well, I mean, I certainly know the
middleman.
concept attached to it. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazon came in and zonked all of the brick and mortar distributors by giving people a better option to get a large amount of material. This pissed off the small business people, which happens in any kind of revolution like this. You do have people who are adversely affected.
Right.
But you go through this, you look at real networks, it disintermediated music and audio content,
Right.
and then later video content. YouTube, what you're doing right now could not have been done unless disintermediation happened.
Right. Yep.
Because you would need big cameras, you'd need a production studio, you'd need, and that's just technology
Someone
advancement.
willing to broadcast it.
That's it. That's where it disintermediated.
Right.
All of this is disintermediation. What happens when you disintermediate finance?
Right.
And
Taking
that's
that
what's
completely
happening.
out of the picture. Yep.
That is what cryptocurrency is all about. Disintermediation, money, and currency. And it apparently is working.
Yeah.
So,
judging by the value.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I gave you the Citibank and the other predictions. Right. I've done my own, and mine is much lower than theirs. It's well, I hate to say it, but it's only 150,000.
Oh well, only.
Yeah.
It's only roughly double what it was a couple of days ago. No, a triple.
Well, you want to hear something really cool? Is if you go back to December of 1918. If you go back to December of 1918, none of this would be there. But if you go down to December of 2018, you're talking about $4,000. So it's already 10x'd since then.
Right.
And now it's going to now I'm thinking it's going to 3x
machine.
From here. No, you don't need a time machine. This is not financial advice. I do
absolutely.
Okay.
There is no financial advice whatsoever on this program.
This is opinion. Purely opinion. And if you listen to anybody on the internet and you just blindly follow them, you're in for a world of hurt, and you deserve what you get.
Yeah.
You have to
Super
always
Chris 63 needs to pick his brain up off the floor. Yeah. It's about where I'm at. Yeah.
You have to do your own research. You have to understand what you're dealing with. You have to be at least semi-competent in trading to a certain degree. If I were me, and I am me, so here's what I'm doing. Every month, no matter what, without fail, I put $1,000 into savings if I can possibly afford it.
Right.
Every time. Up until now, I've put about 10% into crypto and the 90% into fiat. Mm-hmm. I have now switched that. I am now 50-50. And as the inflation starts really kicking in, I'm going to switch it over to 90-10.
Yeah.
So $900 a month into it. Now, remember, another thing with crypto, you don't have to buy a full coin.
I couldn't buy a full coin if I tried.
I couldn't either right now. But I could several months ago, but right now, no. It's out of my range. So,
yeah.
But I would suggest, if you were doing this, evaluate Bitcoin as a value store. Mm. Evaluate Ethereum as a platform, not as a currency. It is a platform
for
that
the
other things
contracting part of it.
And all of this decentralized finance, the DeFi stuff, are contract executions. So that's pretty much the only game in town right now. Although there are a couple of others that are coming up, and I'm actually into those as well. I'm into one called Cardano and one called Synthetics. And I want to get into one called APY Finance, but I don't want to have to go through the pain of getting APY Finance. Because, okay, let me give you you have to do contortions to do this now. APY Finance is, hang on, let me bring it up here so I can actually tell you what's going on. Okay, APY Finance is, better get on the right tab. It is only available on a platform called Uniswap. I don't have a Uniswap account. I have a KuCoin account, I have a Binance account, I have a Coinbase account. I don't have a Uniswap account. So it wants me to pay for APY Finance with Ether or Ethereum. Okay. So if I want to put $500 cash into it, okay, and I'm not saying that would be the number. I'm to say if I wanted to, right, I would have to put it on a platform that would accept U.S. dollars for Ethereum. And some platforms will only move U.S. dollars into U.S. dollar coins or U.S. dollar tether, so USDC or USDT. So then I have to transfer the USDT or USDC to Ethereum, and then I have to move the Ethereum over to BitSwap, and then I have to execute the trade.
Every time what you actually want.
Yeah, it's going to cost me 3 times the value of the coin to get the coin.
Right.
Because you're going
Because
through
of
all these transactions.
Transactions
And
that come in the middle between. Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of ridiculous for me. As much as I want that, I'm not willing to go through that pain.
Sounds in general like the crypto landscape is getting very, very complex.
It started very, very complex, and it's getting more so. So, you know, I spend a good 80% of my research time. Well, okay, let me tell you my research time. Every day I look at the daily charts. Okay, I don't go down into the weeds. I look at the dailies, and you know, this is one of the reasons why it surprised the hell out of me. Everybody's screaming about Bitcoin falling, and I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, it's down, but it's not down any more than it was the last drop during the rise. So what are you bitching about? And I go down and I look at the 1 minute chart and the 5 minute chart. And I'm going, that's what they're bitching about. They're looking at it in too small of a scope. They're right. Trying to minute trade and, you know, hour trade. Don't do that. Yeah. This is too fast for you. I have high powered computers here that actually have every tick of the transaction for the past year, basically. Every single transaction for the past year is available to me to do this. And I look at it, and I have a fast internet connection. I have a fast computer. I can program trade with the best of them, and I'm looking at it and going like, no freaking way, because it is stupid to try to do it. And instead of moving out to a minute trade or a 15-minute trade or an hour trade, I'm looking at it and going like, you know, this is going to give me a heart attack, because I'd be running my algorithms, you know, 32 times a day and not have time to eat. Right. So, and I'd have to do it 24 hours a day, which, right. You know, I have a problem with that. So, problem is called sleep. So I said, okay, I'm just going to back off and do it like I did the stocks before and trade the days. And number one, your life is much more calm. You can just simply glance at the chart and you know exactly what you want to do. You got a couple of indicators, you know, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. Look at the news for it. It takes me 20 minutes to scan, you know, what I'm interested in and what I'm currently in trade. The rest of the time, and it's about 80% of the time, I am using a screener. I am looking at new stuff. I am going and reading the white papers, that kind of stuff. You have to get into it and understand the news and what people are trying to do and where they are in position to the other items. And that is
the vast majority of people don't even understand what a cryptocurrency is in the first place.
Correct. So how are they going to be able to evaluate fundamentals? Yeah. You're down a rabbit hole. You have to understand money. You have to understand currency. You have to understand reserves and reference currencies and stable currencies. Then you have to understand computer shit. You have to understand. I just demonetized you, didn't I? I'm sorry.
I don't think it matters.
Oh, you're not monetized anyway.
I'm not monetized anyway.
I'll curse. I'll curse like a sailor. Then you have to understand the crypto space, the ecosystem. It's huge. Nobody fully understands it. Nobody. Yeah. They don't have enough time to understand it. So you focus on various areas, and then you become very well versed in those areas, like DeFi, which is the big one right now. Oh, but I was going to tell you about NFTs. I'm like Arlo Guthrie.
Meanwhile, back in NFTs.
Yeah, exactly. NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Now, you know what fungible means. He's interchanged one for another. These are tokens, and by tokens, I'm talking about digital assets, which of course can be tokenized, hence the name non-fungible tokens, where one token of the same type as another token does not necessarily have the same value. What good would that be? Art, music, videos, books, blog posts of your favorite gurus who know things you don't. These non-fungible tokens can then be transferred between people. So, you know, let's say I make up a big crypto channel and I become huge, and I've got my special super secret members only section, and you get in by buying non-fungible tokens. So now you come in, it says, okay, show me your QR code for your public key. Think, okay, you're in. Now, what happens if you get tired of listening to me ramble on incessantly and you want to sell it to your Aunt Martha, who can listen to everybody talk for an hour and a half without even thinking about it, and she's interested in crypto? You can then transfer that to her. You no longer have access. They do.
They do, yeah.
Because it's a non-fungible token. It doesn't, it's a ticket. It's a ticket master ticket.
I've been telling people for a long time that blockchain stuff isn't the answer to everything, and I've just discovered I'm wrong.
Don't feel bad, Bill. I discovered I was wrong a while back, and it's taken me this long to put my head around it.
Yeah.
And then it took me another couple of months to figure out how to even possibly explain this to anybody.
Well, I'll tell you in all honesty, after this is over, I will be pulling this out as a clip, just so that it stands alone and people can listen to it repeatedly, like I probably am going to have to really wrap my head around some of it.
I'll end up listening to it as well, because I will be making notes of, boy, did I screw up. I could have explained this better. I could have done this better. But that's all part of learning in the negative feedback loop. But yeah, this whole disintermediation, decentralization, secured ledger technology, and that's what blockchain is. It's a freaking ledger.
Yeah.
Bill owes Marshall $5. Bill pays Marshall $5. Marshall pays Drop of Truth $2. Drop of Truth spends $2 at Starbucks. Drop of Truth gets 1/10 of 1 ounce of their overpriced coffee. Drop of Truth drinks the coffee. Everything's cool. It's just a ledger.
Yeah.
But it's a ledger that is immutable. It cannot be changed once it is validated.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. You can't go back in time and change things. It's just like an accounting ledger.
Yeah.
The way you correct the problem is to make another entry, not to erase, not to change. But when you take that and run it to its logical conclusion, the world changes, literally.
Yeah.
There is no more
everything becomes tokenized, as well as any contracts to do anything become tokenized.
Right. And Drop of Truth points out here. Hang on a second, got a call. That we haven't escaped the concept of fiat trading, and that's absolutely true. What we've done is, instead of trading national fiat, we're trading algorithmic fiat that does not change. The rules don't change. The inflation rate doesn't change. Nothing changes. It's static, which means, by definition, it's stable.
Yeah.
Anything that is stable can be traded reliably. No drop. Negative feedback loop. You never learn from a positive feedback loop. Never. You oscillate out of control. And he hates Starbucks.
A couple of things.
Yeah, let's look at what we've got here, because I have been rambling.
Yeah.
I'm a rambling guy. R-A-M-B-L-I-N.
System.
Apostrophe. Rambling. Okay. Token system must be government controlled because of tax concerns. No. It has to be government regulated, not controlled. And the regulation is everything that's a taxable event has to have the tax part of the contract called. And you simply regulate the validators so they will not accept a taxable event transaction without the little IRS function in there.
Right.
So it's not actually controlled.
It's the IRS. So like a lot of this, the IRS is essentially getting what amounts to vending machine money.
Yeah.
They're getting very small transactions in very large volumes.
Yeah.
As a rule.
It's, I'm constantly finding new rabbit holes in this thing. It's like, whoa, what if you applied it to music? Holy crap. What if you applied it to videos? Holy crap. What if you applied it to television distribution? Holy crap.
Maybe
almost everything you
need,
think about is a holy crap moment.
Yeah, you damn near need sapient AIs just to understand it all.
Yeah. And no drop. I'm not being pedantic. What I'm explaining is when you get to algorithmic execution of contracts, the only thing that can interfere or intercept that is a mandatory function that goes in from the validators or the miners. In other words, they will not allow the transaction to go through without that stub function that does the IRS thing.
The IRS thing.
We're you're kind of right. It is pedantic, but when you're dealing with things that are structured algorithmically, you have to be pedantic because you're dealing with what you're dealing with. You're dealing with the algorithmic structure. It's very precise. It's incredibly precise. It's incredibly sequenced, and if you do anything out of the wrong order, you're screwed. Imagine if I tried to repay that loan that I made before I did it. That's pedantic, but guess what? I'm screwed. So, but
if you get the time machine, maybe you can. But
yeah, I probably could do that. But the pedanticness, the precision, the accuracy that you have to have means that basically financial transactions take on some of the aspects of a very, very well tested and designed software system. And a lot of people are going to scream and pull their hair out when I say that, but no. The programming language you use for these contracts, called Solidity, is a very, very good language. You don't have a lot of things to worry about. It's fairly straightforward. I wouldn't say a lawyer could write it, and in fact, I wouldn't trust anything that a lawyer wrote, even a contract. But it is hard to make a fatal mistake in this language, which is good. So,
one of the questions I saw earlier is how you can buy this. I'm going to show something about Coinbase.
Well, you can show something about Coinbase, but also look at crypto.com. They are actually providing an interface to the Visa system that sources from your Bitcoin wallet. Oh. They have actually made that interface, and that's one of the coins that I picked up speculatively. It's only at 15 cents, and they're the one that's going to do the 60% burn.
Because that was crypto.com?
Yeah, and the symbol for that particular token is CRO. But
right, that's the one where you need the mobile app, right?
Yeah.
Can't show that very easily.
No. But
this one I can maybe.
But the beautiful thing, Drop Truth, is that right now the governments are big enough that they can bully people around. When their currency goes to worthless, they ain't going to be big enough to bully the people around anymore, especially if those people are on blockchain. So they'll have to talk nicely to the miners and say, okay, we're the Australian government and we need to have some taxes. Would you mind putting this in for anything that deals? There's the old saying, he who has the gold makes the rules. And the algorithm has the gold. It makes the rules. So
I have an account here on Coinbase.
Oh, yeah.
That a long time ago, I got a very small amount of Bitcoin, 0.02937 Bitcoin, which is now all the way up to $138, which is way more than I originally paid for. It was a long time ago. But you on Coinbase, and I'm not necessarily saying they're the greatest, you can do all kinds of different ones, not necessarily all the ones that Marshall's talking about.
No,
but there's a fair number of them.
But
that's one place you can go. There are lots of others.
Yeah, there are, and there are lots of better ones. Coinbase, you pay for the simplicity. Trust me, you pay for the simplicity. Um, if you want to learn more about crypto, or if you want to trade it, if any of what I told you has blown your mind, the first part when I was talking about reference currencies, about what Bitcoin is, if that's screwing with your head, you do not want to trade crypto yet. And by trade, I'm talking about actively trade on a daily basis.
Right.
You can hold on for dear life, and if you're going to do that, I would wait until it dips, like it's dipping now,
Right.
and put in a couple of
Buy
$100.
low, sell high.
Yeah, don't do it the other way. That's very bad.
Or in this case, since we're looking at a very, very high, just buy low and hang on to it.
Yeah.
Again,
if
this
you
is
had bought,
not any financial advice.
No, it isn't. Well, I'll actually say that buy low, sell high is financial advice. It's very
Well, it's the only thing I walk away from much of anything knowing.
yeah.
It's should buy low, sell high.
Now, pitfalls, fees. It comes down to fees.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do a no fee swap of dollars for Bitcoin, so that it was perfectly in line and there was no fees and you didn't have to worry about it, trading this stuff would be child's play. But there are fees.
Right. Anytime you make a exchange from one to the other, whether it's dollars, Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., there's always going to be an associated fee.
Right. And for Bitcoin, it's determined by the protocol, but you can kind of skip around that if you're willing to pay a little bit more and get higher on the priority change for getting pushed into the blocks, which memorializes the transaction. For Ethereum, good freaking luck. It is terrible. It's called a gas fee. And I tell you, it works just like a petrogas dollar. It just goes up and up and up and up and up. And a lot of people go, the gas stuff is too high. And I'm looking at it, and once again, I do the negative feedback loop, and I go, why is the gas tax too damn high? And it's because it is being used so damn much. The capacity of the network is being strained to the limit, to the point where there's actually an Ethereum 2 project that's going to work on scalability a little bit better, and speed, and that should reduce the gas tax or the gas fee. But that's not here yet. So guess what? You pay in the high fees, and
right.
The fees can be very high. My worst case was I transferred, I think, $2,000, and the gas fee was $250.
Huh, jeez.
Like, jeez. Highway robbery. Or, I'm sorry, a cyberway robbery,
Cyberway robbery.
Yeah.
And just to think, Al Gore invented all of this.
Yeah, indeed. Bartering. Oh, Mark. We now have Drop a Truth's name. It's Mark, and we may call him Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Bartering. Okay, bartering is the exchange of non-fungible goods when you get down to it. Like I said, sheep for wheelbarrows, wheelbarrows for shovels, shovels for gold. The problem with the bartering is non-fungible. Somebody may want silver really bad, say they're a dentist, other people don't give a damn. So you'll get a higher value proposition from the dentist, but what if you don't have a dentist close by, but you know somebody who barters something differently? There becomes a problem with the non-fungibility that can be solved with a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, because now you have a constant value reference that you can say, instead of me giving you silver or me giving you chickens, you can say, I will give you 10,000 Satoshi, or 1/50,000th of a Bitcoin, close to $1, and you can actually run that way. So it actually makes barter easier because it introduces a fungible layer on top of the barter process. And very similar in a lot of ways to Lincoln's greenbacks. It's a fiat currency, but once again, it's not controlled by humans, it's controlled by algorithm. So, that's the key thing when you get down to it, is there ain't no human that can mess it up.
Right.
And you've got an inflation cap on it.
Yeah.
Those two items all by itself, it's like, oh yes, I'm moving some of my dollars there. So
Now the inflation cap is going to be a huge thing. I mean, just a huge thing. We've talked about it offline too before, but I mean, the press worldwide destroyed the economy solely to make sure that President Trump wasn't reelected. I mean, they literally destroyed the economy, and that's causing the inflation that we're seeing.
Well, they did a hell of a lot more than that. They actually killed people. So,
well, yes.
And I'm not being metaphorical.
No, I know.
People died because of Trump derangement syndrome, but that's a different topic.
Yeah.
So when you think about crypto, you have to think about it in terms of value store on Bitcoin. You have to think about it in terms of compute platform, with a trading binge, not trading binge, a financial trading application platform on Ethereum. So,
okay.
it's
the Ethereum
and then
is
you
kind of the contract side.
Well, for the longest time, they kept calling it the world computer. And that's actually a pretty decent description. It's a world financial computer, which executes contracts. It can act as a value store. It's just those damn gas fees. So we have to get the scaling part of that and get that worked out. Ethereum has actually performed on a percentage basis better than Bitcoin has during this rise up.
Really?
So, yeah. But getting your money in and out.
I think we talked about that with respect to mines. Damn, I can't get it come back up now. But mines does payouts in Ethereum, Bitcoin, I guess. But you and I had talked about mines, and you were saying, or Ether was not necessarily the best way to do it, precisely because of the fees.
Right. Every system has its problems, no matter if it's algorithm driven or not. And the algorithm is what's causing the Ethereum gas prices to go up because the network is being overloaded. And so what it's trying to do is slow down the network and make it easier, to actually work properly. And in order to do that, it's increasing the gas fees algorithmically. So, it's a balancing system. And once the network capacity and scaling capabilities increase, the gas prices will go down because the algorithm can now process more transaction per unit of time. It's supply and demand. There's so many compute cycles,
right?
And you pay for them,
right?
And a smart contract eats gas fees because it's looking for conditions to execute. So every time it wakes up and looks for the conditions, you're using a small amount of gas. Right. So it's eating it. So
the gas fees are related to compute cycles, essentially.
Yeah, or to the scarcity of compute cycles.
Right. Yeah.
The more scarce, the higher it is. Yeah. Bitcoin is much different. The fees are related to. It's a complicated formula, but it roughly comes down to a percentage of the Bitcoin's current price. That's the biggest component, but then it does miner capacity, complexity level, how far you're into the halving cycle. The halving cycle is basically when Bitcoin started, you were given 50 Bitcoin if you successfully validated a block. That's huge now.
Yeah,
50
gigantic.
Bitcoin. But every 400 and some odd transactions, the reward gets cut and the complexity goes up.
Yeah.
So the reward gets halved and the complexity doubles. So, and that is put in because compute cycles are getting cheaper on a 2-year basis. So it's actually a hedge against that. So we're now down, where are we at now? Complexity. We're now down to 6.25. Is it? No. Hang on. Yeah, we're entering cycle 4. So that would be 6.25 Bitcoin per block. That is going to happen at the end of this year. Right now it's 12.5.
Oh, okay.
So oddly enough, that this block halving also mysteriously coincides with the bear and bull runs on Bitcoin. I mean,
really?
It fits right into it, precisely. And if you think about it, it makes all the sense in the world. You know, with a less reward at double the effort, miners start basically going, maybe I'll mine Ethereum.
Well, listen,
but as you get near the end of the cycle,
Yeah. Well, listen, Super Crew 63 is headed out for the night. It's about 12:30 where I'm at, almost 12:40. And I think I've certainly had mind blown repeatedly. So I think this might be a good place to drop off.
Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe we should do this again.
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe we can. I don't know what we can do. Maybe
I'd like to get video on this at some point too. So. Yeah,
that would be cool.
I'm working
at least to the point where I could put up diagrams.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, okay. I will probably. Let me see if I can find my freaking window. I have so many open now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same here.
I'll probably let you drop off, and thanks very much for coming on and explaining this. Because again, I'm going to have to rewatch this again myself a couple of times, because in the middle of it, I'm going, whoa, wait, okay, hold on. It's like walking into the TARDIS and discovering that it's way bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Yeah.
It's
that's
like that.
That is a phenomena that I experienced several times going down this rabbit hole. So it's
I'm sure.
Like, I've got my mind around it. Now what the hell?
Now why is it making that wheezing noise?
Yeah. It's like, did somebody not? Did you release the brake? No. Okay.
Okay, well, appreciate you
Bill.
coming on, Marshall. I'm sure I'll have you on again sometime, and I would think tomorrow or the next day, depending on how long it takes me to pull this out and edit and then re-encode it. I'll probably have this out as a standalone video that I'll be referencing again. I'm sure of that. So.
Well, one of the interesting things you might be interested in, I don't know if the audience would be, is how I've set up some of the software to do the algorithmic stuff by itself. It's basically a program trading platform, but I
can take a look at it. I got a Raspberry Pi that's doing absolutely nothing right now.
Yeah. Right. There are some things that require a little bit more power.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will talk to you later, Marshall. I appreciate it very much you coming on.
No problem. Thank you, Super Crew, and Mark.
And Mark.
So
thank you, guys. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, as I say, my mind blown repeatedly, and at the same time, my back is hurting. So I guess, amazingly, sarcasm? No. My mind is just still wrapping my head around stuff, honestly. That was way bigger than I would have imagined it would have been. That's just astonishing to me, the whole thing. I'm gonna be rewatching this one several times, I'm sure. So, with that, I guess that's all the time we have. That's all we have to say about that for the moment. So thanks for watching. That is all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch. And do leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks. Man, we can really use them this time. I'll certainly try to get back to you. It's a long sack of wind, but it was still very good. So thanks for watching. That is all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where you get your mind blown every time because it's somebody or my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.